Chapter 1344. Wan Guangxiao chuckled as he took the bottle and drank a mouthful of water. Since it was delivered here, he might as well leave the bottle behind. At the very least, he would have a container to hold the water once he found a water source. The moment Wan Guangxiao drank the first mouthful of water, a sinister and cunning smile appeared on Kento Ono's face. The corners of his mouth curled up, causing Wan Guangxiao to feel the urge to slap him. Is there something in the water? Ha 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 ha. I'm afraid it's too late for you to react now. Kento Ono sneered. There is indeed something in the water, something that can make you obediently close your eyes. Just as Kento Ono was getting carried away, Wan Guangxiao dug his finger into his throat and vomited out a pile of things. He sneered as he stood up. What if I vomit it out? Can you still make me obediently close my eyes? Kento Ono was completely stunned on the spot. This guy actually used such a simple method to neutralize the drug that he had painstakingly concocted. Kento Ono, have you heard of this saying? Those who are unjust are doomed to destruction. Wan Guangxiao said indifferently. This saying has already been proven by Hitler, Mussolini, and that bastard Hideki Tojo. Now, do you still want to try it yourself? Kento Ono stared blankly at Wan Guangxiao. Wan Guangxiao's mind was very clear, and there was no sign of him being unconscious. He was not affected by the drug at all. I gave you a chance to scram, but you still used the excuse of being friends with me to cause trouble for me, Wan Guangxiao said. It's the same logic as when Hideki Tojo used the excuse of **** to invade Asian countries. If he loses, you will definitely lose as well. Kento Ono sneered. Hehehe, you are very shrewd, Wan Guangxiao. You have always been wary of me. Even when you took the bottle, you still did not believe me. Of course I won't believe you, Wan Guangxiao sneered. Tonight, our visibility is definitely not more than 10 meters. It's impossible to tell who's who from 10 meters away, but you were able to find me and bring me water and food. Can I trust you? Why not? Kento Ono was unwilling to give up. He wanted to know why Wan Guangxiao suspected him. The fact that you were able to confirm that the person in the dark was definitely me despite being so far away only proves one thing. You've been eyeing me since you could still see people's faces clearly during the day. Wan Guangxiao said. It's just that we don't have a chance to make a move, and we're much more vigilant during the day. Kento Ono sneered. At least you have a brain. Since you've already shed all pretense of cordiality with me, then don't blame me. I'll be frank with you. If you obediently come back with me now and submit to Adler, then I'll spare your life. If you insist on resisting, then tomorrow you will be attacked by even more of Adler's subordinates. At that time, you won't even have the chance to regret. If you come with me today, maybe I can help you plead for leniency. Wan Guangxiao spat. Can't you speak the truth? Kento Ono, you really make me feel like laughing. Do you really think of yourself as someone by Adler's side? Kento Ono's face twitched. Wan Guangxiao was right. He was not even a dog by Adler's side. Adler coming to cause trouble for me was probably your idea, Wan Guangxiao smiled faintly. Even if you die in my hands, he won't feel sorry for you. Instead, it became an excuse for him to make a move on me. Because everyone knows that you're just a dog by his side. Kento Ono, you always think that you're very smart and can make use of Adler's power. In fact, that's not the case. Adler is much smarter than you. Kento Ono's sore spot was poked and he suddenly shouted. I don't care what you say. I'm going to take your life today. I'm afraid you don't have that ability. As Wan Guangxiao spoke, he had already pulled out his dagger. Facing this despicable Japanese, Wan Guangxiao did not hesitate to strike first. If he wanted him to die, then he would die thoroughly. He did not even give him a chance to fight back. Kento Ono was not a person without any ability. Facing Wan Guangxiao's sudden attack, he reacted immediately and quickly retreated to avoid the fatal stab. Wan Guangxiao realized that he was more or less affected by the medicinal properties of Kento Ono's water. His attack speed and reaction speed were slower than usual. If it was any other day, Kento Ono would not have been able to dodge his attack. One must know that in the International Special Forces Training Center, Wan Guangxiao's assassination speed was the fastest. The training center had a test to test one's assassination ability. Within a villa, They had to assassinate 18 hypothetical locations and rescue hostages. In this test, Wan Guangxiao was far ahead of the second place by nearly 5 seconds. 5 seconds. In this place, the opponents were all abnormal. 5 seconds was a time gap that would shock everyone. The second place was the American, Adler, who was known as the strongest in the Special Forces Training Center. After Kento Ono dodged Wan Guangxiao's first attack, he instantly realized that this guy in front of him was still affected. His speed and explosive power were slightly slower, and it was because of this slight delay that he had the chance to escape. At this moment, fighting was tantamount to suicide. Wan Guangxiao had already spat out the water. The medicinal properties would only get weaker. If he continued to fight, the person who would die in the end would definitely be Kento Ono. After understanding this problem, Kento Ono completely entered escape mode. Wan Guangxiao chased him in this pitch-black swamp for nearly half an hour before giving up. The sky was too dark. Moreover, they had already traveled for a day. They were getting closer and closer to the center of the swamp. There were already terrifying swamp pits on the ground that could completely suck people in. One wrong step and they might not be able to walk out again. After running for so long, Wan Guangxiao was worried that he would lose his sense of direction in the dark. While he could still rely on his memory and senses during the day to determine the direction, he decided to stop chasing and quickly make a mark. This was to prevent him from getting lost the next day. With such a large swamp fog and such a hazy night, he was afraid that the next day would be gloomy. When there was no sun, once his sense of direction was messed up, he might not be able to find his way again. Wan Guangxiao's guess was right. At 5 o'clock in the morning, before the sun had even risen, the sky began to pour. The rain was pouring down in torrents. The entire surface of the swamp had turned into a vast ocean. Anyone who could still make a clear judgment would be able to understand a simple truth. The ground beneath their feet had completely lost their sense of direction. No one could tell where the swamp pit that could swallow people was. As long as they reached the bottom of the tree, they would die. Moreover, a large number of crocodiles had appeared out of nowhere. They were all hiding in the muddy rain and mud. It was impossible to distinguish them with the naked eye. These aggressive carnivores were also very patient. If their prey did not reach a place where they had a 100% chance of landing a fatal blow, they would not easily attack. The bite force of a crocodile was huge and shocking. Even if these special soldiers were all called abnormal by ordinary people, they still could not avoid the terrifying bite force of a crocodile. Wan Guangxiao also did not dare to rashly walk to the bottom of the tree. He could only rely on his memory and senses to continue making marks. He tried to think of a way to pass through the trees, getting closer to the center of the swamp bit by bit. Unless it was absolutely necessary, he would not easily get down from the tree onto the muddy ground. The heavy rain continued for an entire day. Wan Guangxiao also cursed for an entire day. He did not eat anything for the entire day. When he was thirsty, he relied on drinking rainwater to quench his thirst. There was no place to catch food in this weather. At this moment, Wan Guangxiao regretted not choosing water and food. A large amount of energy had been lost, making his hunger more obvious than usual. It seemed that this training center was called the Hell Training Center by the entire world. After being here for a month, Wan Guangxiao had thoroughly experienced the power of hell today. Chapter 1345. The day's rain finally stopped in the evening. Without the sun, his body was damp and cold, and his hunger was unbearable. This was Wan Guangxiao's current situation. Of course, he was in a terrible mood right now. The person who provoked him at this time was definitely not a wise person. After confirming a safe place, Wan Guangxiao peeled off some tree bark and used the dry and flammable parts inside. He found 2 flints that could produce sparks and used the last of his patience to light a fire. Now he had to dry his clothes first so that his body could retain as much heat as possible. Otherwise he would get hungrier and hungrier. It was not easy to hunt for prey in this place at night. Once there was a fire in the dark, it would definitely attract the attention of living things. Animals were generally afraid of fire, so Wan Guangxiao wasn't worried that any ferocious beasts would appear. If they really did come, he would really have to thank them. He was just worried that there wouldn't be any meat to roast with such a good fire. Now, even if an 800-gene wild boar king came, he would fight it to the death for meat. The fire did not attract any ferocious beasts, but it attracted people who were even more terrifying than ferocious beasts. Finally, the first figure appeared. He slowly walked over from afar and gave a friendly signal to Wan Guangxiao. Brother, I also need fire. Let's help each other. I have food here. If you have food, bring it over. Wan Guangxiao clenched the dagger in his hand as he spoke. It wasn't that he didn't trust the person in front of him, but after the incident with Kento Ono, it was difficult for Wan Guangxiao to trust anyone. His brothers weren't here. The best relationship between them could only be considered as the same batch of students. It was just a relationship between students. Give me your food, and I'll let you warm up by the fire. Wan Guangxiao could not believe that the person in front of him chose his food. Maybe he also snatched it. Maybe there were drugs in his food. These were all possible dangers. Okay, I'll give you food. The person slowly walked closer. He took out the food and expressed his goodwill. You're that Huaxiao Wan Guangxiao, right? My name is Sawatika, I'm Thai. So it's a Hindustani. Wan Guangxiao was taken aback. No matter what, since this guy had expressed goodwill, he would give him a chance. At this time, Sawatika had already handed over a whole piece of unopened compressed biscuit. Wan Guangxiao didn't stand on ceremony. He took it directly and opened the packaging. However, he was not in a hurry to eat. Instead, he broke off a piece and handed it to Sawatika. You eat first. Sawatika was touched and smiled. Thank you. Without hesitation, he took the hardtack that Wan Guangxiao returned and stuffed it into his mouth. From the looks of it, he seemed to be very hungry. Since he was so hungry, why wouldn't he eat the food? Seeing that the other party didn't have any adverse reactions after eating it, Wan Guangxiao was relieved and ate the other half of the compressed biscuit. He gulped down a few mouthfuls of water, hoping that the compressed biscuit would expand in his stomach. That way, he would feel full. Sawatika was in a daze as he warmed himself by the fire. He stared blankly at the flames, his eyes lifeless. Wan Guangxiao also realized that the piece of compressed biscuit he had just handed over was the last bit of food he had left. He used the last of his consciousness to judge that compared to food, he needed the warmth of the fire more. That was why he decided to give the compressed biscuit to Wan Guangxiao without hesitation. Indeed, Sawatika's body was extremely lacking in heat. The cold feeling made it hard for him to hold on. If he didn't want to collapse in the swamp at night, Wan Guangxiao's fire was a necessity that could keep him going. As for food, at most, he would think of a way to catch small animals that could be eaten here tomorrow. If there was really nothing to eat, he could eat even the wild grass and tree bark. Did you choose the food from the start? Wan Guangxiao suddenly asked. He remembered that if he chose food and water, he would get 9 pieces of compressed biscuits. It was impossible for a person to eat so extravagantly in 2 days. After Sawatika heard Wan Guangxiao's question, he was startled and slowly raised his head. It was me. It was my first choice. Only 1 piece left? Wan Guangxiao asked again. Sawatika's face was a little embarrassed. I met Adler and the others. They asked me to hand over the food. Otherwise I would be. Obviously, as a soldier in the special forces, no one was a softie. No one wanted to give in. There was no other way. I couldn't deal with so many of them alone. Sawatika's expression was dim. But I couldn't give up. I didn't want to disappoint the country's expectations of me. I didn't want to disappoint my family's pride in me. I could only choose to stay alive. If I could survive, I would have a chance to get the badge and continue to stay in the training center. I didn't want to be driven away. I only hid this piece of compressed biscuit. The rest were taken by Adler and the others. This was the truth. Wan Guangxiao could see from his expression that this guy knew what could be exchanged with food, so he didn't hesitate to hand over the biscuit just now. Are you interested in forming a team? If we encounter trouble, we will fight together, find the badge together, and catch the food together. Wan Guangxiao said lightly. Although I don't know you, I am also a person who doesn't want to disgrace his country, so I think we should be the same kind of people, right? If you can trust me, then form a team with me. He was not afraid of a godlike opponent, as long as he had a godlike teammate. Sawatika knew how powerful Wan Guangxiao was. He had heard about Wan Guangxiao every day for a month. Of course, he wouldn't refuse to form a team with such a godlike teammate. This was definitely not a trap. If you don't mind, I am willing, Sawatika said. I will definitely be able to trust you. I am the only Thai. One of my former companions was killed during deep diving training. Is what you just said true? Of course it's true, Wan Guangxiao said. Otherwise, why would I return half of the compressed biscuits you gave me? I am afraid you will be hungry and drag me down. Now we are officially allies, and we will find the badge together. The training mission will be completed together. If he was a man, his words would be like a nail in a nail. Do you understand what I mean? Sawatika nodded vigorously. If I betray you, I will die a horrible death. It seemed that this oath was made a little too early. Just as Sawatika swore to live and die with Wan Guangxiao, someone else was attracted by the fire. This time, it was not as simple as one person but a group. In this training center, only Americans could form groups. Wan Guangxiao knew this in his heart, and so did Sawatika. Adler finally appeared. Wan Guangxiao was a little surprised. He thought he would meet this guy in the central swamp. He didn't expect that the fire he started would attract so many people. In fact, there were people who were attracted by the fire one after another. When they arrived, they realized the existence of Adler and the others and left one after another. They were all very impressed. Huaxia people were the best at starting a fire. They could even use stones to start a fire. At this moment, everyone's body was damp. Therefore, fire was the thing that everyone needed the most right now. Adler was no exception. He was also full of resentment because of his cold and wet clothes. Chapter 1346. I was wondering who it was. No wonder you're so powerful. You can even get fire. Adler was the one with the most right to speak. Before he opened his mouth, no one dared to speak. Everyone knew that their boss, Adler, was in a bad mood. Since they met, Wan Guangxiao had no intention of avoiding. He smiled and pointed at his temple. As long as you're willing to move this place, any problem can be solved. My clothes are already dry. It's especially warm to wear. Do you want to warm yourself up? Wan Guangxiao looked indifferent, but Sawatika wasn't as calm. He was truly afraid of Aid's group because he knew that his companions were killed by them. However, he didn't have any evidence, so he couldn't do anything to Aid's group. This pain made him very conflicted. He wanted to fight so much, but he was also afraid of failure. Adler was very surprised. Wan Guangxiao's first sentence to him was an invitation. It seemed that this Huaxia was also very smart. He knew who he could not afford to offend. Since he took the initiative to invite him to warm himself up, of course he would accept. What he needed most now was fire. He could also get his subordinates to get some drier branches to make more fire. This way, his men wouldn't have to suffer from the cold. As expected of a friend from the state of etiquette. Ha ha ha, then I won't stand on ceremony, Adler said as he walked towards Wan Guangxiao's fire. Adler's people's morale instantly rose. There were a few people hiding in the dark who made disdainful remarks to Wan Guangxiao. However, these words were said from the bottom of their hearts. They did not dare to let the people near the fire hear them. Of course, if you want to warm yourself up, you have to pay a price. Wan Guangxiao suddenly put forward a condition. How about we make an exchange? In this place, no one had ever dared to raise conditions with Ada. Hearing Wan Guangxiao's words, Adler's first reaction was anger. Just as he was about to get angry, he suddenly saw Wan Guangxiao holding a bottle of water and raising it above the fire. Wan Guangxiao met his gaze and said, I said my clothes are dry and I'm very warm. As long as I shake my hand, this fire will be extinguished. Think about what I said. Damn it. What a blatant threat this was. Adler's heart felt as if someone had ruthlessly punched it. This kind of humiliation was unbearable to him. And he was on the verge of exploding. But if the fire was extinguished, so what if he killed this damned fellow in front of him? None of his subordinates knew how to start a fire with stones. The heavy rain made all the vegetation in the swamp wet. He really didn't have the ability to survive. He needed this fire. Right now, what they needed the most was a fire. Silence. Dead silence. The entire swamp seemed to have stopped time. Even the wind had stopped moving forward. The silence in the air was terrifying. The only thing they could hear was their own thumping heartbeats. Fine. Tell me, what do you want? Adler finally opened his mouth again. He had chosen to compromise. For the sake of this fire, he was willing to make a sacrifice. He did not want to endure the feeling of being soaked, not even for a minute. In order to express his sincerity, Adler continued, "As long as it is something I can do, I will give it to you in exchange. Tell me, what do you want? As long as you are willing to leave the fire to me, I will give you anything you want." "Give me half of the food that you currently have," Wang Guangxiao said coolly. "I believe you have already plundered many people's food, right? Leave half of it, and save some food. It should be enough for you and your men to survive. Give me the rest." Half of the food? Has this fellow gone mad? Adler was on the verge of hysteria. "You want so much food? Do you think you can finish it all? Wang Guangxiao, you had better not challenge my patience." Wang Guangxiao did not say anything else. He poured out a mouthful of water from the bottle. Sizzle. The intensity of the fire instantly decreased by half. "Right now, you should be the one challenging my patience, right? Adler, you have plundered so much food. What you have plundered is not as simple as just food. What you have plundered is also the opportunity of those warriors. Do you understand? I want back what you have plundered. As long as you return half of it, I will give you and your men a chance. I will also give others a chance. Don't go overboard." The fire at night in the swamp was definitely a hope that could attract a large number of trainees. Thus, Wang Guangxiao was certain that other than Adler's men who had walked out into the open, there were many others who were hiding in the dark. A large number of these people were those who had their food plundered. Wang Guangxiao's words earlier were meant for those who did not dare to show their faces. He hoped that those people would stand up and help him face Adler and his men. Relying on his own strength, he could not possibly contend against Adler. Even if Adler were to give him the food now, once he obtained the fire, he would immediately order his men to snatch the food away. Unsure if it was Wang Guangxiao's imposing manner that had infected Sawadika, Sawadika suddenly stood up and glared fiercely at Adler. "Return my food to me. You have no food because you have no choice. You have no right to deprive me of the right to choose my food." Seeing that the Thai man who was usually bullied and didn't dare to speak up was angry, ADHD almost flew into a rage and attacked Sawadika. However, Adler's peripheral vision caught sight of Wang Guangxiao raising the bottle again. If the water from the bottle were to be poured down, the fire would definitely be extinguished. Adler's face was completely gloomy. Using a voice that could kill, he said, "Take out all the food, give them half." Hearing Adler's words, Wang Guangxiao let out a sigh of relief. He was also struggling with his thoughts. If he extinguished the fire, he wouldn't have any bargaining chips to trade with Adler. He also didn't know whether he should pour the water or not. Fortunately, Adler chose to compromise first. Otherwise, Wang Guangxiao really did not know what to do next. Seeing Wang Guangxiao's victory, a lot of people quickly stood up. All of them came out from the darkness, and all of them looked very angry. They chose to stand up at this time, obviously for the sake of food, but also because there was finally someone who could stand up for them. This was something that the training center had never seen before. "Yes, our food. Why should it be taken away by you? You did not choose the food and water, so you used the dagger you chose to hunt." The people who stood up were angry. It had always been the Americans who acted like tyrants. Today, it was finally their turn to admit defeat. That's right, for the fire, for the body heat, Adler chose to submit. However, Adler's heart was still angry. He would not let them get the food from his hands so easily. As long as he took back the fire, he would still choose to plunder the food. These people, in his eyes, would always be nothing more than prey. Humph, humph, humph. A group of trash actually wanted to act like a tyrant on his head. Absolutely unforgivable. But now, at this moment, he had to make a sacrifice. These food that he took out, he would definitely take it back. And the next time he took it back, he would not let these people off so easily. He wanted to bury them all here. Wang Guangxiao got the food and gave the right to use the fire to Adler. After Adler got the fire, He sneered at Wan Guangxiao and said, "You will regret it, today's matter, and the matter of Kento Ono, we will settle the score together. Although Kento Ono is a Japanese, I won't let him die in your hands. Do you understand? Kento Ono is dead." Wan Guangxiao was stunned. That guy made him chase for so long last night. "What are you pretending for? Don't think that I don't know what you did," Adler finally said. "I won't touch you today, but don't let me see you tomorrow." Chapter 1347. Wan Guangxiao did not think that Kento Ono would actually die. He was quite surprised. That guy ran faster than a rabbit. He could not even catch up to him. He actually died just like that. Afterwards, he found out that Kento Ono died at Adler's hands. It was during that night's chase that the panicked Kento Ono ended up stepping into a terrifying muddy swamp pit. The swamp pit wasn't scary. As long as one was careful and held their breath, they could still ensure that they wouldn't get sucked in. Retribution was that perhaps Kento Ono had done too much evil, so his luck was really too bad. The escape route he chose led him into the center of the wetland. The periphery of the swamp was a rather dangerous place, known as the crocodile pit. Only a few people who went to that kind of place alone could return alive. Speaking of which, Kento Ono was really lucky. He actually managed to escape from that place where there were dozens of crocodiles. Unfortunately, although he managed to escape, the crocodile had bitten off his entire left arm, and even his right calf. His entire muscle was ripped off, and he ran back to the base where Adler and the rest were staying. When Adler and the rest saw this badly mutilated guy, they were instantly stunned. They had to admit that this guy's vitality was really too tenacious. Unfortunately, the master he chose was Adler, a guy who only cared about his own interests. After Adler heard Kento Ono's account, he immediately made the decision to kill this badly mutilated guy. Because he escaped from the crocodile pit, the whole way was covered in blood. There was no guarantee that the smell of his blood would not attract the crocodiles, or even more terrifying creatures. For the sake of the big picture, Adler did not soften his heart towards this normally obedient little lackey. He did not hesitate at all when he killed him. Before Kento Ono could understand why his master abandoned him, he had already stopped breathing. His body was left in the same place, while Adler and the rest quickly moved away. No one wanted to stay here and wait for a group of horrifying swamp crocodiles to crawl towards them. Everyone had a mentality of fear, even people like them. In order to survive, they could not help anyone. Kento Ono should be able to understand Adler and the rest. Because if it was him, seeing such a badly mutilated person, how could he help? Yes. Under such circumstances, under such conditions, so what if he saved her? It was impossible for them to survive. This was because none of the 900 players had chosen the flare gun. All of them only had one way to go, and that was to enter the central swamp, get the badge, and then leave this damned place. Along the way, unless they died, they could only chase after this goal and walk all the way to the end. Adler would not blame himself for Kento Ono's death. He would push all the blame onto Wan Guangxiao. Kento Ono had become like this because of Wan Guangxiao. If it wasn't for Wan Guangxiao, Kento Ono wouldn't have gone the wrong way and entered the crocodile pit. Adele will be here soon? This thought was instilled into the consciousness of all his subordinates. Wan Guangxiao had become the demon that every one of them feared almost overnight. Adler was very clear that as long as there was a chance, he could use the fear of others to quickly kill Wan Guangxiao. With Kento Ono dead, no one would dare to provoke Wan Guangxiao alone. Adler had to use the power of many people. He couldn't do it himself because he was very clear. Wan Guangxiao's ability was too strong. He would definitely be noticed by the higher-ups. Although he could do many things on a normal day, and the higher-ups would turn a blind eye to it, but if he did anything to Wan Guangxiao, they would not allow it. That was why he thought of letting Kento Ono do it. Since Kento Ono was dead, he could only use everyone. What if everyone did it? He was very clear about the simple principle of the law not punishing the masses. Only by using this method could he make Wan Guangxiao fall beyond redemption. Adler was very clear about this point. He believed in his own judgment. This was also the reason why Adler could become General Adler today. His judgment was very sharp. He knew how to handle a matter to make the ending of the matter perfect. Adler didn't do anything to Wan Guangxiao. Even if Wan Guangxiao used the bonfire to exchange for half of his food, he still endured it. At this moment, there were too many eyes staring at him. Once he made a move, he couldn't guarantee that he wouldn't be at a disadvantage. Secondly, he couldn't guarantee that those who had been opposing him would help him. He couldn't guarantee that those who were opposing him would help him. Ada's thoughts were meticulous, and Wan Guangxiao was also a man with both rough and meticulous thoughts. He had also analyzed the reason why Ada didn't make a move despite being forced to this point. He felt that the biggest possibility was that Ada was afraid that those who had been robbed by him would be angered at this time and step forward bravely. Adler's biggest enemy wasn't Wan Guangxiao's strength alone, but Wan Guangxiao's ability to lead the other international special forces soldiers. Wan Guangxiao was very clear that now was the best time for him to buy people's hearts. He had obtained so much food that he couldn't finish it all by himself. If he monopolized it, of course, no one would come to rob him. However, he would quickly lose people's hearts. At least, no one would trust him anymore. Instead, they would treat him as someone like Adler. Wan Guangxiao wasn't that selfish. Brothers who are hungry, come out. Everyone can share the things I have here. Wan Guangxiao gathered those who had been robbed. These people appeared more and more. In front of more than 100 people in Adler's group, Wan Guangxiao gathered more than 200 people from a place not far from them. People from all the continents in Asia, Europe, and Africa gathered towards Wan Guangxiao. One must know that if the food was distributed to these people, it would only be enough to satisfy their hunger. So, if only a third of the people were given, then this third of the people would be able to last with Wan Guangxiao until the end. Faced with this choice, Wan Guangxiao didn't hesitate to divide the food equally. Those who dared to come out at this time and gather near Adler's group were definitely so hungry that they couldn't take it anymore. Those who still had some food and could hold on were still hiding in the dark. They were afraid that they would offend Adler, and also afraid that they would lose the food they had. People. Sometimes sex was so selfish. Since these people chose to come here because they had nowhere else to go, Wan Guangxiao naturally wouldn't keep the food. Because everyone here had the right to live. Although they weren't from the same country and weren't united, they were still people from the same training center. Seeing Wan Guangxiao distribute the food so generously, as Wan Guangxiao's first little brother, of course, he felt that it was necessary to stand up and remind him. Brother, what we are doing, isn't it too wasteful? These people are likely to leave after eating. They are just here to scrounge for food. What Sawadika said was right. He didn't avoid anyone present. It was obvious that he was a straightforward person. Wan Guangxiao smiled slightly. Although it wasn't very loud, it was enough for everyone to hear. He said to the people around him, "If you leave after eating, I don't care. But if you are willing to stay, then tomorrow, we will think of a way to solve the food problem together. I think if 3 to 5 people work together, it shouldn't be difficult to catch some animals that can be eaten, right? If all of us stick together, even if we want to eat a crocodile, it should be a small matter, right? It's up to you whether you want to leave or stay." Chapter 1348. The reason behind Wan Guangxiao's words was very simple, and everyone was very clear about this problem. It was already the second day since they entered here. Although no one had counted how many people had died, it wasn't difficult for them to imagine the situation of others based on their own current situation. If everyone didn't unite, perhaps it would be impossible to enjoy tomorrow's sun, right? Today, everyone present, one after another, had eaten the food that belonged to Adler a few minutes ago. Would Adler bear a grudge? Of course not. He would never let go of anyone who had eaten the food that belonged to him. These people were aware of this point the moment they stuffed the compressed biscuits into their mouths. However, the hunger at that moment made them unable to stop. Many people had not eaten for 2 days. That feeling of emptiness was so strong. In such a huge swamp full of danger, if they couldn't even replenish their physical strength, then death was completely in front of them. If they wanted to survive, if they wanted to avoid Adler's harassment, if they wanted to finally get the badge, complete this survival training, and continue to stay in this training center to learn real special warfare management experience, If they couldn't survive to the last moment, then their previous tolerance and persistence would become worthless. Because the training center didn't open at the same time, but people sent by the country at any time, as long as they passed the basic assessment, they would be thrown into the training center for devil training. Therefore, some people had been here for a year and only encountered this swamp survival training, while some people had only been here for 10 days and encountered this damn training program. These newcomers had never encountered such cruel survival training, and often found it difficult to persist. But once they persevered, they would quickly mature and become the best in the training center. Wan Guangxiao had only been here for a month, and he was also a newcomer. He was able to do so many amazing things in such a short period of time, sending away so many bullies in the training center, and had long been looked at in a new light by everyone. And today, under such harsh living conditions, he was not afraid of power and stood up to contend with Adler, instead of wallowing in the mire with him. Under such harsh living conditions, he was still able to share food with everyone, organize everyone together, and not give up anyone who begged him for survival. If this kind of person said that he wanted to unite everyone, he would definitely be able to do it. Everyone believed that Wan Guangxiao had the ability, the strength and the courage to unite everyone, lead everyone to get the badge, and lead everyone to fight against the bullying and oppression of a Des gang. After all, everyone knew in their hearts that even if they got the badge, it might not necessarily be a successful end. Only ghosts knew if Adler's group would come to snatch the badge they found. These were all very likely to happen, so everyone knew that sticking together was the only way for them to survive and complete the mission. There was only one person in the International Special Forces Training Center who had the ability to unite these international soldiers who had been ostracized by the American soldiers, and that was Wan Guangxiao. Now that Wan Guangxiao had stood up, everyone fell into hesitation. It was still fear that was causing trouble. They were all too clear about the strength of Adler's group. That group's strength was too terrifying, so much so that they didn't even dare to imagine how they could contend against Adler's group. If you don't even have that much guts, then what's the point of coming here? Ha ha ha. Wan Guangxiao suddenly laughed a few times and said lightly, "With this level of skill, it's better for you to leave early. It's better for you to leave early. Although there's no signal gun, if everyone leaves together, I believe that someone will arrange it." These words definitely deeply stimulated the heart of everyone present. No one wanted to be a coward. If they returned to their country dejectedly, wouldn't they become a joke? They couldn't go back even if they died. What it meant to go back, everyone was well aware of it. If you think you still have some guts if you're a man, then stay. Wan Guangxiao still used his understated tone to say, "I only make friends with real men." The last sentence finally completely angered these iron-blooded men present. Yes, they had really unknowingly lost their guts. Coming here, in order to stay, in order to give their country an explanation, they would rather swallow their anger and not provoke a disgroup. They weren't men without guts, but their tempers had been erased for some purpose. Finally, after they couldn't bear it any longer, everyone exploded. Wan Guangxiao could see that once a person's guts were aroused, the gaze in their eyes would be completely different from others. Of course, there were also people who had completely lost their most fundamental motivation. After eating the hardtack given by Wan Guangxiao, a portion of them chose to leave silently. These people had seen too many people forced into a corner by a Des group, so even with Wan Guangxiao leading them, they didn't have confidence. Once self-confidence was dispelled, it could almost be said that it would never be raised again. It was the same for everyone. So no matter what you do, the first thing you have to ensure is your self-confidence. Only with self-confidence can there be a possibility of success. Those who left, Wan Guangxiao would never ask them to stay, because these people were already crippled. In their consciousness, they were no longer strong enough to be a man, but only needed to be a person who didn't lose face for the country. It didn't mean that they had no guts, but their guts were all for the people who could see them. At least, the humiliation and grievances they suffered here couldn't be seen by the people of the country. They were also great warriors. Not far away, his mood was very bad at this moment. Although the fire made his body dry a lot, Wan Guangxiao's call not far away made him feel more threatened. What made him feel even more uncomfortable was that there were a lot of people who stayed by Wan Guangxiao's side. There was no need to count. At a glance, there were about 170 or 80 people who stayed in Wan Guangxiao's camp. This wasn't a small number. Even his Meizhou gang didn't have so many people. Now Wan Guangxiao had obviously become a thorn in Da's side. He had to pull him out no matter what. He definitely wouldn't give him any chance to breathe. This training center gathered elites from all over the world. When these people returned to their countries in the future, they would be the trump card of their country's military power, the most powerful secret weapon. Da was very clear about this. Because of this, he couldn't allow Wan Guangxiao to walk out of this swamp alive. Even if this International Special Forces Training Center belonged to the United Nations, he decided to take a risk under the eyes of the leaders of the United Nations. Even if he was found out, he had to do it. This was also for the future of the United States to prevent a strong enemy like Hua Xia from having a trump card like Wan Guangxiao in the hands of Wan Guangxiao. It had to be said that Da was definitely a rare talent for the United States. He was also an absolutely loyal professional. Everything that was for the benefit of the country was right in his eyes. It didn't matter if it was despicable when it was done. This night, everyone was safe and sound. Da's people didn't cause trouble. Wan Guangxiao's team also realized that as long as the team was strong, Da's people wouldn't dare to make a move easily. This also greatly increased their confidence. In the next 2 days, no one had anything to eat in their hands. Even Da's team had no food. Even if they wanted to plunder, there was no one left to plunder. They could only rely on hunting the prey here, some unknown animals. Of course, they ate the most crocodile meat, because they had already passed the crocodile pit and entered the central swamp. This place was lacking in everything, but the swamp crocodile was the most abundant. This kind of crocodile that liked to lurk in the swamp was quietly waiting for prey to be delivered to its mouth every day. The people who participated in this survival training also relied on crocodile meat every day to replenish their physical strength. The people and the crocodiles spent 2 days fighting each other. 2 days later, Wan Guangxiao saw the so-called central swamp. It was a swamp that couldn't be stood on at a glance. And those badges were inside. The bubbles that came out from time to time told Wan Guangxiao that the crocodiles inside were probably bigger and more terrifying. At this time Da, who had been lurking behind Wan Guangxiao, finally couldn't help but want to make a move. Chapter 1349. It had been 4 days and 4 nights since they entered the central swamp of the Pantanal wetlands. In these 4 days and 4 nights, nearly 1,000 trained special forces had suffered heavy casualties. Less than 600 people had made it to the central swamp. Although some of those who did not make it to the central swamp could not be confirmed dead, at least they had no chance. It was impossible for them to overcome this terrifying swamp with their scattered combat forces. Of the less than 600 people, Wan Guangxiao's team made up nearly a third of them. He displayed his combat leadership skills to the fullest. None of the people who stayed with him that night died. Sometimes some scattered people joined in. After 4 days, Wan Guangxiao's team had reached 200 people. Only about 70 people were injured, and about 30 of them were only slightly injured. Then there was Adler's team. Adler's combat leadership skills were definitely a rare genius. Although his team had a few dozen fewer people than Wan Guangxiao's team, other than Kento Ono's accidental death, no one had died. The number of injured people was also less than 40. These 2 teams made up most of the people. In addition to them, there was a team from the European Union. Although there were less than 100 people, their cooperation was very good. Although 4 people had died, most of them were intact. The injury rate was very low. Then there was the Russian team of 30 people. Perhaps their ethnic blood was strong enough. Although they were small in number, they never bowed their heads in front of the Americans. Moreover, their combat power was also quite strong. Not one of the 30 people was seriously injured or killed. Of course, this also had to do with the small number of people. The smaller the number, the more cautious they were. Therefore, their survival rate was higher. After all, they were not ordinary people. These 4 teams made up the majority of the people. The remaining people were scattered. There were small teams of a dozen people, And there were also a few groups. They could not even be called a team. Those who were able to reach this stage all proved that their ability to survive was far beyond that of mortals. Only such a person could be considered a special soldier. When these people finally saw the so-called Central Swamp, they were still amazed. The Central Swamp was hundreds of hectares. It could be described as an endless expanse of land. Apart from the scattered tree branches that poked out of the swamp, all they could see was the muddy swamp and the huge bubbles that popped up from time to time. Occasionally, they could see squirming in the muddy swamp. There were only crocodiles wriggling. Looking for badges in such a swamp? It sounded like a joke to the extreme. Maybe all the badges were in the crocodiles' stomachs. Moreover, there were very few thick trees in the swamp that could escape the crocodiles' attacks. Stepping into the swamp was no different from stepping into the gates of hell, right? Damn it. Who the hell designed this training program? They're basically sending us to our deaths. We're not playing. What kind of bullshit survival training is this? Is there still a chance to survive? Someone had already roared and complained. Indeed, this was not something that ordinary people could endure. Wan Guangxiao believed that these people who could persist until today were certainly not simple people. Their survival ability, individual combat ability, and team cooperation ability had all been verified. However, they found that there were almost impossible things for them to do. This was probably something that no one could accept. Everyone present would be shaken at this moment. There was no doubt about it. Even Wan Guangxiao was the same. He was also thinking about whether to gamble with his life in this survival training that was basically no different from suicide. At this moment, a helicopter slowly flew over from a distance. A huge loudspeaker came from the sky and shouted, "Are you all scared? This is just the beginning of the swamp training. The previous 4 days were just a warm-up. Is it so easy to become a special force? For days to get here. Do you still have the face to panic, complain, and say no? Those who can't accept it, get lost immediately. You don't deserve to be the hero of your country. And you don't deserve to be the pride of your country." These words were like a sharp knife that stabbed deeply into the hearts of everyone present. Do you think this place is very scary? What is this? The Pantanal Swamp is nothing in this world. Indonesia's Java Valley Cave is known as the Devil's Mouth. It has 6 trumpet-shaped cave entrances. Needless to say, those who enter by mistake are in danger. Even those who keep their distance will not be spared. When people or animals pass by the cave entrance, they will be pulled in by a powerful force and eaten. Even if they are 6 or 7 meters away from the cave entrance, they will be sucked in by the devil's mouth. There are already piles of bones inside, and it is difficult to distinguish which are human and which are animal bones. Those who are better than you can still be found by those who are truly special forces. If they have the courage to go in, they will also have the ability to come out alive. In the unavoidable Kamchatka Peninsula, in this 2-kilometer-long Death Valley, the terrain is rugged, the rocks are jagged, bears, wolverines, wild boars are all dead, and the white bones are everywhere. It is a desolate sight. The valley is filled with harmful gases. But there are also real special forces that have gone in to check it out. That is why they brought us the news of poisonous gases. In the Death Valley that connects California and Nevada, on both sides of the valley, there are cliffs and precipices. Danger is everywhere. Those who see it shudder, and those who hear it change their expressions. Many exploration teams have never returned, and were completely wiped out. Similarly, they were also conquered by special forces. There is also Huaxia's Forbidden Zone, northern Tibet's no man's land. Other than the mountains, lakes, grasslands, and wild animals, it is almost completely barren. That place is indeed beautiful, and there is no air pollution. The air is very transparent, and everything looks very clear. But why is it a no man's land? The oxygen content in the air is very low, and the climate changes constantly. The lakes are all saline and alkali water. What looks like a beautiful place is actually full of danger. But there are still special forces that can survive in that place for a month or even longer. Do you know why? Because you are the most special soldiers in this world. You are not ordinary people. Not ordinary soldiers. The test of death that you have to undergo is far more difficult than other ordinary soldiers. If your mission is something that can be easily completed, then what qualifications do you have to call yourselves special forces? Do you know why special forces are special? The uniqueness of the special forces lies in the fact that they are able to complete missions that are impossible for ordinary soldiers. Those badges that represent your honor, the badges that represent your special forces, the badges that represent your difference from ordinary soldiers, the badges that represent your country's belief that your choice is not wrong, are all within this swamp. If you can prove to me that you can find it, then you will be a real special forces combat unit. If you cannot, then you are a bunch of trash. The lecture on the helicopter lasted for more than an hour, and all of the lectures were targeted at him. Every sentence deeply stimulated everyone present. They had already persevered until now. Were they going to give up? Of course not. Absolutely not. If they gave up today, then it was the same as giving up everything. Even if those badges are in the stomach of this giant swamp crocodile, we will still cut open the stomach of this crocodile and retrieve the badges. Retrieve our honor. Wan Guangxiao was the first to shout out the anger in his heart. Chapter 1350. Adler, they look like they have a lot of fighting spirit. What should we do next? The one who spoke was Adler's right-hand man. His name was Neville and he came from Texas. He seemed to be born with a fighting spirit. As long as there was a chance to fight, he would not let it go easily. In the past few days, they had been keeping a distance from Wan Guangxiao's team, because Adler's mind was focused on how to deal with the harsh conditions here. They had to find food and avoid danger. They had no time to find trouble with Wan Guangxiao. Now, they had arrived at the central swamp. If they did not act now, it would be too late and there would be no more opportunities. Opportunities were reserved for those who were prepared. They had been preparing for so long. They should be able to solve this problem now, right? Since they have the fighting spirit, let them fight for it first, Adler said calmly. In this kind of place, you can't survive with just a little fighting spirit. None of us know what is in this damn place. After all, no one can prove whether the legend of the swamp crocodile is true or not. What if it is true? What do we have to fight against such a legendary creature? Then what do you mean? Neville frowned. Let them explore for us first? Of course, we know nothing about this damn place. If we want to explore the secrets inside, there must be sacrifices, Adler said. I don't have the guts like that Huaxiao guy. He dares to rush up when he wants to. Indonesia's Java Cave, Kamchatka Peninsula, California's Death Valley, northern Tibet's No Man's Land. Those places mentioned in the plane just now might be explored with the lives of trainees like us. Today, we will use our lives to uncover the secrets of this great swamp. If you want to gain something, there must be sacrifices. The people above are very clear about this simple truth. Neville had to admit that he did not follow the wrong person in the training center. Adler considered everything so thoroughly and carefully. Not only did he consider the thoughts of the people below, but he also had insight into the thoughts of the people above. With such a person leading them, they could become unshakable kings in this damn training center. The reason why Nivi wanted to get rid of Wan Guangxiao was because Wan Guangxiao was starting to shake their position as the king. This person's rallying power was too strong. He was able to gather so many people together in such a short time. It would be better for them to deal with this as soon as possible. Neve, if this person can be taken care of without us doing anything, that would be the best. Ade said faintly. We can make use of the European Union and dozens of Russians. Originally, I wanted to do it myself, but since there are such unique conditions here, let me think of other ways. Adler's insidiousness lay in this. He could change his plans at any time. He would definitely not hang on to a decision. His ability to adapt to changing circumstances was probably something that not many people could compare to. Before the helicopter came, he did not have this idea. As the helicopter ignited the fire in Wan Guangxiao's heart, he immediately changed his strategy. He could use everyone's mentality to solve the problem. In addition to Wan Guangxiao's group who were burning with anger, the Russian team of 30 people was also burning with anger. They were confident that they could solve this problem with their strength. Wasn't it just a few crocodiles in the swamp? It was nothing to a brave and good at fighting like them. What Adler wanted to take advantage of was this point. Since they both thought that they could solve the problem with the burning flame in their hearts, then let their two flames burn each other. Very soon, Adler had an idea in his mind. In fact, if he wanted to make them fight, it was very simple. He only needed to use a little trick. After a whole day of exploration, no one dared to enter the central swamp. No matter how passionate they were, everyone was very clear about the consequences of provoking this natural swamp. Wang Guangxiao also ordered everyone not to act rashly. If they wanted to solve the danger of the swamp, it was impossible to do it with manpower alone. They needed to make tools that could allow them to stand on the swamp. In the evening, the entire swamp had become a place for crafting large wooden rafts. Although the only tool they had was a dagger, they could still break down the trees bit by bit. Then they would weave the flexible vegetation into strong vines, and use them to tie the branches of the trees together to create a wooden raft that could carry people across the swamp. This idea was first proposed by Wang Guangxiao, so when they started making the first prototype of the raft, the other teams began to realize that this was indeed a good way to solve the problem of standing in the muddy swamp. Then, in the evening, everyone started to follow suit. Even Ade and the others couldn't help but admit that Wang Guangxiao's idea was too good. They also ordered their men to start making rafts. At this moment, Adler was still thinking about something else. He realized that the Russians had used the shortest amount of time to gather the sturdiest rattan plants in the surroundings. Undoubtedly, they were smart. Moreover, a few of the Russians had carefully hidden the vines they weaved in a place, and arranged for a person to watch over the vines. Everyone was busy until the sky was completely dark, and not a single shadow could be seen. Only then did they stop. They were racing against time, because the longer they waited, the hungrier they became. After entering the central swamp, it was very difficult for them to catch anything that could be used as food. Moreover, the crocodiles hiding in the central swamp were very patient. They didn't give the humans any chance to attack. Hunger, weariness, and intense sleepiness invaded everyone. When the sky was completely dark and everyone couldn't see and couldn't continue working, everyone started to use wooden rafts to encircle the vines. Then, they took turns to watch over the vines. The others quickly fell asleep. This night was the most tiring day for everyone since they came to the swamp. Although they took turns to watch over the vines, the people on duty were always so tired that they couldn't open their eyes. At this point, most people didn't think that there would be any danger from their own people. At least, they didn't have anything that Ade and the others wanted. Ade and the others were also making rafts, so they wouldn't take the risk to fight for it at the last moment. Even so, early the next morning, a problem still occurred. One of the Russian team of 30 went missing. Along with that person, their strongest vines were also missing. This matter was a huge blow to these guys. They immediately pointed the spearhead at Ade and the others. Because in this place, perhaps only Ade and the others could do such a thing. These damned bastards. They actually dared to touch their people. Several different kinds of so-and-so skis rushed into Adler's camp. Ade didn't show any hostility in the face of the Russian team's attack. He actually patiently communicated with them. In the end, he even let these Russians carefully inspect their rafts. Finally, these Russians didn't find the vines they made on Ade's rafts. They were very confused. Could it be that they made a mistake in their judgment? I've always had a good impression of you Russian brothers. Ade smiled faintly. Here, I might as well tell you something. Think about it. For us to reach this point, whose team is the biggest? If you don't have a scheming person, can you reach this point? Several so-and-sos suddenly realized. So it was that Huaxia person. They didn't expect him to do such a thing behind their backs. He was simply sanctimonious. The anger of the Russian team was instantly ignited. They didn't care about the vines. They only cared about their missing comrade. Chapter 1351. Companions were very important to any team. It was also a bottom line that most people could not tolerate. If they only lost the vines, they might choose to tolerate it. However, if they lost their companions' lives, they would not forgive them so easily. Just as the Russians were about to take out their knives and kill Wang Guangxiao's team, Adler stopped them. The leader of these dozens of Russians was called Drokiski. His combat power was definitely the best in the training center. However, one could rarely hear his voice. It could be said that he was the embodiment of the International Special Forces Training Center's low-key. Perhaps he was not the highest in the various training tests, and could only be regarded as average. However, Adler could see that Drokiski was deliberately hiding his strength. With his strength, he could easily be ranked in the top 10 in the training center. There was a very important reason why he chose to keep a low profile. It was because he did not want to be targeted. Adler could see what this guy was thinking, so he was very clear about the current situation. As long as he could force Drokiski's combat power out, he could completely use him to deal with Wan Guangxiao. Adler really wanted to see what kind of sparks could be created if these two guys fought with real swords and spears. Drokiski, I can understand how you feel now. One of my men also died in the hands of Wan Guangxiao. This Huaxia person is really arrogant. Adler said, but I have to admit that his appeal is strong. You should also admit his ability. Although we can't verify his character, his ability is obvious to all. What do you mean? Drokiski's gaze was somewhat cold. You want to cooperate with me? I'm sorry, Adler. Although your team is indeed very strong and you have enough people under you, I'm afraid my people won't get along with your people. There is no possibility of us cooperating. I will find a way to solve our own problems. You don't have to worry about it. Adler snorted. Using an old Chinese proverb, this is called a dog biting Lu Dongbin and not recognizing the good intentions of others. Of course, I know that your people are not on good terms with my people. I don't want to participate in this matter. I have no obligation to help you. The reason why I'm telling you this is because I've also suffered at the hands of Wan Guangxiao. When we have a common enemy, even if we can't be considered friends, we should be considered allies, right? I said so much just to remind you not to underestimate your opponent. Drokiski narrowed his eyes. He was very clear that Adler would not do anything that did not benefit him. What is your purpose? Why do you want to help me? What good will it do you? That's right, if I were to clash with him, it would definitely be a lose-lose situation. You could just sit back and reap the benefits. Drokiski, if that's the case, do you think I need to tell you so much? Adler said disdainfully, what I'm doing now, isn't it to stop you from doing something that will hurt both of us? What do you think I want? I just want you to win. That's why I'm telling you this. If you don't think it's necessary, then I don't need to talk nonsense with you. You're the one who was impulsive. I'm the one who advised you. I didn't bewitch you into doing something impulsive. Think about it carefully. It was indeed so. Drokiski thought about this question carefully. Indeed, as Adler said, the one who was reckless and impulsive was him, not Adler. If Adler had not stopped him, he would have led his brothers to fight with Wan Guangxiao's people. Of course, Drokiski was also very clear that what Adler wanted to do was definitely beneficial to him. If it did not benefit him, he would definitely not stand out to help him. What can you do for me? Of course I won't help you at all. I just want to tell you that if you bring your people to provoke Wan Guangxiao now, there will only be one result. Adler said, he has the ability to call on his people to stand up and fight against you. At that time, if you want to escape, I'm afraid it won't be so easy. I don't deny the fighting ability of you and your brothers, but you have to think clearly. People who can survive until now are definitely not simple. They all have a certain level of strength. Seeing that Drokiski's face had begun to change, Adler knew that his words definitely made Drokiski realize the threat of Wan Guangxiao, and this kind of threat must be eliminated. Adler continued to promote Wan Guangxiao's threat theory. I can guarantee that if your dozens of brothers provoke Wan Guangxiao, they will definitely be wiped out by his nearly 200 people. I'm definitely not looking down on you, but it's almost 8 against 1 battle. You can't win. Yes, you're right. 8 against 1. It's impossible for us to win. We don't even have the chance to lose. Drokiski's face showed a bitter smile. It turned out that the Americans were not the only powerful people in this world. As long as they had strength, they could stand arrogantly in front of him. Even this Huaxia dared to take his things and kill his brothers. Damn it. Drokiski was a little regretful. If he had roped in more people when he first arrived at the training center, He would not have fallen to this point now. He was confident that as long as they banded together, even if there were only 30 of them, no one would dare to provoke them. After all, even Adler's American faction did not dare to touch them. Who would dare to touch him? He had never expected that in the end, it would not be the Americans or the European Union that would step on his head. Instead, it would be a group of people from all walks of life led by this Huaxia man. This Huaxia actually relied on these people to be so arrogant and not put them in his eyes. Damn it. The anger in Drokiski's heart could not be swallowed. Although he did not like Adler for now, he really needed Adler's help. Adler had already told him very clearly that they would not do anything. Drokiski believed this because Adler really had no reason to sacrifice for them. What can you help me with? Drokiski finally let go of his inner insistence. He wanted to hear what the American had to say to solve their current emergency. In a head-on confrontation, the loser will definitely be you. But if you avoid the sharp edge, maybe you still have a chance. He knew very well that Drokiski's vengeful mentality was too serious. As long as he grasped his vengeful mentality, he would be able to use him. At that time, not only would he be able to get rid of Wan Guangxiao, he would also be able to fall on Drokiski's head, killing two birds with one stone. Drokiski knew that Adler must have his dirty tricks. Perhaps this dirty trick was originally used by him to deal with them, but now he gave it to him to deal with Wan Guangxiao. It was conceivable that Adler really could not tolerate Wan Guangxiao. Drokiski also heard about where Adler's hatred for Wan Guangxiao came from. It was said that this Huaxia could actually make a fire on a wet rainy night, and use the fire in exchange for half of Adler's group's food. Adler also used this half of the food to establish his prestige in front of those people. Now, Wan Guangxiao could stand tall in front of so many people. It was definitely not just a matter of his personal ability. A considerable part of the reason was that these people were indebted to him. They all ate the life-saving food he gave them that day. Since Adler had a reason to hate Wan Guangxiao, Drokiski did not need to worry about Adler playing tricks on him. So there should be no mistake in believing in him now. What kind of plan do you have? Drokiski was completely controlled by Wan Guangxiao's threat theory. He completely pointed the spearhead at Wan Guangxiao. Chapter 1352. Drokiski, you are a smart man. There is no need for me to say anything. You should be able to see the current situation. Ade said coolly. This swamp is not something that can be easily conquered. Just now, the people in the helicopter had said so much. I can understand that they are just adding fuel to the fire. Naturally, there will be people who will pay with their lives for the sake of their hot-bloodedness. And in Wan Guangxiao's team, there is no lack of such people. Drokiski was stunned. You mean to say, let them go to their deaths? Is there any difference between that and not saying anything? Is that your idea? You think Wan Guangxiao would be so stupid as to rush to his death? He has so many people under him. So many of them are willing to die for him. You want him to wait for his death. How is that possible? Ade said with a disdainful smile. If you don't do anything, nothing will happen to Wan Guangxiao. He will take the lead and lead his men into the swamp. You only need to take action then. Is there any difference between taking action then and taking action now? We are both facing the same opponent. Although he will not be able to use his full strength in the swamp due to his caution, the same goes for us. We will also be facing the same problem. The result will still be fair. Ade shook his head. That is not necessarily true. If you fellows do not take action against his men, you might be able to catch him off guard. There is no need for you fellows to deal with him. The things in the swamp are enough for them. What you need to do is to make sure that your wooden rafts are good enough. Have I made myself clear enough? Drokiski instantly understood what Ade meant. He did not want him to attack Wan Guangxiao's men. Rather, he wanted him to attack their wooden rafts. As long as they enter the swamp, they would not be able to survive without wooden rafts. Why did he not think of such a simple logic? It was not that Drokiski did not think of this. Rather, he was not as ruthless as Ade. This idea of his, other than the word sinister, Drokiski could not find another word to describe it. Although his brother's death was because of Wan Guangxiao's order, And his gang members were definitely involved. Drokiski didn't want to kill so many people at once. After all, destroying a wooden raft would implicate many innocent people. A great man must be ruthless. If you can't even handle such a small matter, you're destined to never achieve great things. Ade said, Wan Guangxiao is willing to sacrifice your people in order to achieve his goals, even if it's just for a few vines. You should be the one who knows how ruthless he is, right? He's not so kind as to give up on something he wants to do, because he's afraid of implicating innocent people. At the same time, Wan Guangxiao was also lost in thought. He was a little lost. He personally supervised the last step of tying the wooden raft, so he knew what each joint looked like. In order to ensure the safety of the wooden raft, Wan Guangxiao's joints were flexible. These flexible joints could effectively prevent the sudden attack of the beasts in the swamp. Wan Guangxiao had seen the ferocity of the crocodiles, so he had no doubt that if the joints of the wooden raft had no space to move, it would be easily destroyed by the crocodiles. In order to ensure everyone's safety, Wan Guangxiao also let his subordinates pass on this point. Whether it was the Americans, the European alliance, the Russians, or the other small teams, they all received this news. Because the principle was simple, everyone used it. But now Wan Guangxiao's flexible joints had suddenly become rigid joints. This made him more or less vigilant. After all, last night, it was the others who took turns to be on duty. Everyone hoped that he could have a good rest so that he could have the energy to lead everyone to conquer the swamp today. Wan Guangxiao looked at this joint and thought for a long time. He also realized that the vines used to tie this joint were not the ones they always used. He went forward and pinched it. He found that the vines were tougher. Based on this point of consideration, Wan Guangxiao eliminated the possibility of someone trying to sabotage them. He didn't say anything. He just silently tied the joint back into a flexible joint. At this moment, Drokiski suddenly brought his men to Wan Guangxiao's wooden raft. They just happened to see Wan Guangxiao tying the joint again. Wan Guangxiao, thank you for the advice you gave us. Drokiski suppressed the anger in his heart. If possible, I want to cooperate with you. I believe that you will be careful when exploring the swamp for the first time, and I will also be careful. Let's each take a few capable brothers and explore the swamp together. Wan Guangxiao glanced at Drokiski. This was the first time he had a face-to-face conversation with this Russian. This didn't seem to be his style. He always advocated relying on his own team to solve everything. I don't want to take all of us to take this risk. That's why I want to cooperate with you. Drokiski continued to explain. A wooden raft can only carry 15 people at most. To increase the probability of safe exploration, 2 wooden rafts must cooperate with each other. If that's the case, all of my people will have to enter the first exploration. Although we can believe in our own abilities, we can't really guarantee anything. I just don't want to put all of my people in danger for the first time. After a pause, Drokiski continued to look at Wan Guangxiao, who was looking at him seriously. I believe that you also don't want to put 30 of your people in danger. Each of us will take a wooden raft, 15 people. We will cooperate with each other for the first exploration of the swamp. Wan Guangxiao fell into silence. Of course, he knew that Drokiski's words were reasonable, but he didn't know why he was still a little suspicious. After all, he didn't have any friendship with Drokiski. Drokiski suddenly stood in front of him and said that he wanted to cooperate. This more or less made him a little uneasy. Why don't Aide's people or the European Union's people explore for the first time? Sawatika complained. We can wait for them to explore for the first time. This way we can reduce a lot of the risk. We don't need to take this risk. You think those Americans and Europeans will do this first? Drokiski sneered. I have something to say. Those people are waiting for you, because they all know that Wan Guangxiao is a man with integrity. As long as they don't make a move, he will be the first to rush in with you. I had the same thought at first, but now I don't think so. I want to cooperate because my people and I are not cowards who only know how to hide in the back. Drokiski was right. Wan Guangxiao didn't walk in front because he wanted to be the strongest. Instead, those people were like Drokiski said. They only knew how to hide in the back and wait until the danger was eliminated before they followed. It had been like this for the past few days. Wang Guangxiao also understood the situation. If he didn't lead people into the swamp, the others would stay in the swamp for 3 days, 5 days, or even a month. They might stay in this damn swamp forever. What would happen in the end was even more difficult to predict. After all, when people were forced into a corner, they would go berserk. If there was a shortage of food and they couldn't find anything to eat, the hundreds of people present would be in danger. So at this time someone had to step forward. Wang Guangxiao didn't have any personal heroism, but he knew that his actions might affect the final outcome of hundreds of people. All right. I agree. Wang Guangxiao finally nodded. He agreed to Drokiski's request for cooperation. Chapter 1353. Boss, as long as it's something you decide on, I will support you unconditionally. But you have to tell me that your decision is not made rashly. Sawatika took a deep breath. As long as it's something that you can control, we will listen to you. Wang Guangxiao nodded. I won't make any rash decisions and I won't let any of my brothers die casually. For the first exploration, I will personally lead the team and bring along our most capable brothers. Drokiski's heart twitched. You won't let any of your brothers die casually, but you can let his brothers die just because of some rattan. Humph, as long as you dare to enter the central swamp with me, I will definitely make sure you don't return. Wang Guangxiao, you have to be responsible for what you have done. You have to pay with your life. You have to publicize your ugly deeds to the world, so that the whole world can see your face. You have to let the whole world know what kind of person you are. As long as boss says the word, I will be the first to go with you. Sawatika completely admired Wang Guangxiao. After a few days of contact, he realized that Wang Guangxiao's sincerity to everyone was definitely not for a certain purpose. He simply wanted everyone around him to live. They could all complete this survival training mission and continue to stay in the training center to learn the essence of the final stage. Moreover, Sawatika realized that staying by Wang Guangxiao's side, he had been learning all kinds of things that he did not understand before, especially the ability to command and control the overall situation. These things seemed to be innate, and Wang Guangxiao was born with this ability to rally people. His words were convincing. Since we have agreed, let's go together, Drokiski said. Drokiski said, I can listen to all your arrangements. As long as you can guarantee the safety of my brothers, I only have one condition. As for other things, you can do whatever you want. Okay. Wang Guangxiao nodded. Let's do it this way. Let's first be clear about the purpose of our first exploration. I hope you can emphasize to your people that I know you are all brave and good at fighting, but our purpose is only to explore and determine where the danger line is, where the swamp is, where the crocodiles will appear, and whether the crocodiles are more powerful than the ones we encountered before. As long as we get these things, we will leave immediately. We must ensure everyone's safety. Drokiski nodded and said, Okay, I understand. I will pass on the message to everyone under my command. We will definitely control their behavior. Then, our raft will be in the front, and your raft will be in the back. Wang Guangxiao said, I can say that the reason for my arrangement is that you will be safer than us. In fact, that is indeed the case. But at the same time, it does not guarantee your safety. It is not impossible for us to miss the crocodiles lurking in the swamp. Once a crocodile falls behind us, you will be responsible for killing it. Otherwise, it will be very difficult for us to evacuate easily. It sounded like the front was safe again. After all, if the people in front found danger, they could stop in time, and the people behind had to be ready to deal with a sneak attack at any time. Fortunately, crocodiles did not have the intelligence to think of deliberately going behind to sneak attack, so although the people at the back faced a huge risk, the probability was small. Although the people in front had the opportunity to predict danger in advance, the probability of facing danger was high. Therefore, no matter who was in the front and who was in the back, it was the same. There was no fairness or unfairness. Drokiski also knew this probability. He nodded, indicating that he agreed with Wang Guangxiao's arrangement. Since that was the case, then let's start. When do we set off? Let's go now. Wang Guangxiao said without hesitation. Time waits for no one. The sooner we solve the problem and get the badge, the sooner we can leave this damn place. I don't really want to stay here for a month. I'm afraid we will become barbarians by then. Wan Guangxiao quickly selected a dozen people with quick reactions and ability to get on the wooden raft with him. Drokiski also quickly brought people over. The 2 wooden rafts were pushed into the swamp, one in front and one at the back. Everyone held a thick wooden stick in their hands to support the raft forward. The other hand was holding a dagger, ready to deal with any sudden danger. They have entered the central swamp. Neville had been very dissatisfied with this, but this was Adler's decision, so he still chose to support it unconditionally. In fact, in his heart he had always wanted to fight with Wan Guangxiao, because he heard about Wan Guangxiao's personal ability, so he was particularly interested in this guy with super strong personal ability. Now this guy was going to be killed by Drokiski in the swamp. He did not even have the chance to fight. Wasn't this his biggest regret in the training center? If this decision was not made by Adler, if it was not Adler's judgment, he would definitely not support it. He would support all of Adler's decisions, just like how Sawatika trusted Wan Guangxiao now. Trust was slowly cultivated. No one would believe or trust someone from the start, because the person they trusted would bring them the results they wanted, and did not disappoint them every time. That was why they would continue to trust and choose to believe. Trust was definitely not something that could be won with just a few words. Instead, it had to be proven through actual actions. This was why a leader was a leader. Neville, I know you don't like me doing this. Adler smiled. But you should understand that it is safer to let others come in contact with such a dangerous person than to do it ourselves. Everything is for the sake of achieving the goal, and achieving the goal is enough. Any means will do. This is what I have told you many times. I know, Neville said. There is an idiom in Huaxia, by hook or by crook. It means that in order to achieve the goal, any means will be used. You have indeed taught us many times. Adler nodded with satisfaction. That's right. Since this saying came from Huaxia, it means that Wan Guangxiao is also a person who will do anything to achieve his goal. We can only use this method to deal with him. Neville suddenly said, what if Drokiski and the others fail this time? Do we need to do it ourselves? If Drokiski fails, then in this place, we must never argue with Wan Guangxiao again. Adler said, I really don't like him, but this doesn't mean that I will be like Drokiski, taking your lives as a joke. Each of you must leave this damn place alive. This is my responsibility. In the end, Adler's mood was a little agitated. He was indeed under a lot of pressure. So many people trusted him to lead them to find the badge and leave here. He could not let these people down. Therefore, now he could only hope that Drokiski would not let him down, and get rid of Wan Guangxiao as soon as possible, and then let the people led by Wan Guangxiao become scattered sand, and then be used by him to achieve their goal of finding the badge. Everything was planned. Adler could only wait for Drokiski's good news, and let Wan Guangxiao's corpse sink into the swamp. Let the swamp crocodile deal with him. Chapter 1354. Although Wan Guangxiao was personally leading the team, the people on the wooden raft still couldn't escape their deep fear of the swamp. Being in an abyss and treading on thin ice couldn't describe how nervous and cautious they were at the moment. Treading on a swamp was truly frightening. Facing the swamp that could swallow them up in the next second, the 30 people on the 2 wide wooden rafts didn't have a relaxed expression on their faces. Wan Guangxiao and Drokiski were under even more pressure. Each of them was responsible for the lives of more than 10 people on their rafts. It might sound simple, but when it came to the point where you were responsible for more than 10 lives, you would realize that it wasn't simple at all. The huge psychological pressure would make it hard for you to breathe. Only people who reached this point could understand the true meaning of the training center's survival training. Only people who could lead a team could understand the true meaning of this survival training. No matter how many leaders there were, they could clearly feel that any decision made under these harsh conditions would require human lives to bear the risk. Only then could they continuously improve and realize how important their decisions were. That's right. The true meaning behind this training was to let the few talented leaders in the training center understand how cruel the so-called special forces were. If they couldn't even bear this little responsibility, they would never be able to grow into a leader. The ultimate goal of the training center wasn't just to train some strong people who could endure hardships and wouldn't frown even if they were to die. Their ultimate goal was to train a group of people who could make their own decisions and take on huge risks. They could become the strongest human warriors behind the human race. Although their basic principle was to protect their country from harm, they were also the main blade in fighting terrorist attacks. The training center would train these people not only for their country's use, but also for the entire world. If there was a need for them and the United Nations asked for help, they would unconditionally choose to take on this responsibility. This was the obligation of any country. The United States was well aware of this situation. They would constantly send people to the training center and had their own ideas. The United States continued to explore outer space and became more and more certain that other than Earth, there were many other planets with the possibility of life. Once these living beings in outer space were highly evolved and highly intelligent animals, there was no guarantee that Earth would not be invaded. If that day came, these people would be the most powerful force to deal with this impossible possibility. The Americans believed that one day there would be an interstellar struggle for hegemony, and that there would be mysterious creatures that would invade Earth. This was because they were certain that once they found a beautiful planet that was habitable and had the ability to reach it and take it for themselves, they would invade. These questions were a bit far-fetched. However, the existence of this training center was to cultivate all-round leaders who could face all kinds of problems. People like Wang Guangxiao, Adler, and Drokoski could enter the sight of those people because they had such abilities. Adler only wanted to get rid of Wang Guangxiao because he didn't understand the training center's deeper purpose of training them. If he knew, he definitely wouldn't have done anything to Wang Guangxiao. The reason why the higher-ups still turned a blind eye to Adler's bullying was because they appreciated people like Adler who was willing to give up and scheming. Although this kind of person would give people a particularly sinister feeling, at critical moments, he was absolutely an indispensable talent for mankind. Being able to do these things meant that he was irreplaceable. Translator. WQL editor. Alim. The wooden raft slowly moved forward on the swamp bit by bit. The people on the wooden raft kept their eyes fixed on the muddy surface of the swamp. Any sparkling object in the muddy surface would make them delighted and extremely disappointed. They had been moving forward for about an hour and a half and had completely entered the central swamp, but they still hadn't seen a single badge. How in the world could they find those damn badges? Wang Guangxiao was obviously burning with anxiety. The weather before the storm was often unusually calm, and the current calm seemed to have some meaning. It was too calm. It seemed to give people an illusion that this place was even safer than the outer area. Could it be that even the swamp crocodiles couldn't survive here? Then what kind of creature could produce those bubbles that they occasionally saw before? Why was it that after they entered the swamp, they couldn't see them anymore? Were there no crocodiles here? Obviously, this inference was extremely laughable. This place was the largest source of swamp crocodiles. How could there not be those terrifying big guys? Finally, in the instant when everyone's taut bowstring was about to relax, the muddy swamp ground suddenly exploded with a bang. A huge swamp crocodile that was far larger than the swamp crocodiles in the outer area suddenly appeared in front of Wang Guangxiao's wooden raft. Its huge bloody mouth emitted a rotten stench. This stench made people feel nauseous. Protect the wooden raft. Wang Guangxiao's first reaction was to throw the thick wooden stick into the crocodile's mouth, attempting to use it to support the huge bloody mouth of the crocodile. He was all too clear in his heart. Only by protecting the wooden raft would they have a chance to survive. If the wooden raft was destroyed, not to mention the possibility of other crocodiles in the surroundings, even if there was nothing, the swamp would slowly swallow them up bit by bit. He wouldn't bet his life on someone coming to save them. If they wanted to survive, they had to survive. Gotcha. The enormous strength of the crocodile's bite directly shattered the thick wooden stick that Wang Guangxiao threw in. At the same time, the huge crocodile's mouth seemed to be injured. The immense pain caused it to pounce even more ferociously. Wan Guangxiao didn't hesitate any longer, pulling out his dagger and leaping high, directly pouncing towards the head of the huge crocodile. The lives of the two wooden rafts, he had the responsibility to bring them back. He had to solve this problem before him. Yet at this moment, Wan Guangxiao suddenly noticed that not only did Drokiski not step forward to help him, he actually pulled out his dagger and viciously chopped off the rattan ropes used to bind the wooden raft. What exactly was this bastard doing? Didn't he know that this would cause the deaths of many people? Could it be that this guy wanted to use them as bait to make it easier for them to escape? If that was really the case, then these Russians were really despicable. In his anger, Wan Guangxiao directly pierced the crocodile's two eyeballs with his dagger. The huge and terrifying swamp crocodile was directly stimulated to its weakest spot, rolling away from Wan Guangxiao and mindlessly rushing deeper into the swamp. Wan Guangxiao quickly jumped back onto the wooden raft. He didn't act like the people on the wooden raft, each of them looking at Drokiski with a shocked expression. He quickly found the spare rattan ropes, then ordered the people on the wooden raft to quickly fix the loose ends of the wooden raft. Then he used manpower to prevent the wooden raft from falling apart. What is the meaning of this? Wan Guangxiao sneered as he looked at Drokiski. I trusted you. Yet you actually did something like this. You know very well why I did this. Drokiski said coldly. Take a look at the vine that I cut off. Is it yours or not? Look at our wooden raft. Only our wooden raft uses rattan as the knots. Last night, the person in charge of guarding the rattan died. The missing rattan appeared on your wooden raft. Do you need me to explain anything else? Chapter 1355. Wan Guangxiao finally understood why the rattan joint was different. So it was like this. Then who would do such a strange thing? Although there was no evidence, Wan Guangxiao could also understand who asked Drokiski to cooperate with him. That was their scheme. No wonder Drokiski would take the initiative to cooperate with him. Wan Guangxiao never expected him to come with this idea. Just because of this thing you want to harm so many people? Wan Guangxiao held the cut rattan in his hand. Your target should only be me. Why do you want to put so many people in danger? Don't pretend to be sanctimonious. Drokiski said coldly. You killed my brother for the rattan. Why didn't you think of this problem? Wan Guangxiao, today, I will make you pay with your life. Is there something wrong with your brain? Sawatika scolded angrily. He held the dagger tightly and almost rushed forward. Was this guy really an idiot? Our boss was resting last night. How could he steal your rattan? Think about it carefully. If we didn't teach you how to make a wooden raft and the joint, would you be able to make it? If he wanted to harm you, he didn't need to teach you these things at all. Wan Guangxiao signaled Sawatika to not be so agitated. If they quarreled too loudly, it would cause a new crisis. Don't talk so much. Since he chose to do it, it means that he has his own judgment. That's right. Why did Wan Guangxiao teach them these things? Drokiski was also stunned. Could it be that he really made a mistake in judgment? But the rattan was on Wan Guangxiao's raft. Impossible, he couldn't have made a mistake in judgment. It must be Wan Guangxiao looking for an excuse. He wouldn't be fooled. No matter what you say, I won't believe you, Drokiski said. Drokiski said, your wooden raft can't be fixed anymore. Unless I help you, your people won't be able to complete the repair work while standing on it. Wan Guangxiao, you can only blame yourself for trusting the wrong person. With people standing on the wooden raft and in the swamp, it was impossible to repair it. If Drokiski chose to leave quietly, Wan Guangxiao's wooden raft would break apart sooner or later, because the people controlling it had lost their strength. You may leave, Wan Guangxiao said indifferently, but I still have to remind you that there's no one to take care of you on the way back, so you have to be careful. Also, the matter with the rattan has nothing to do with me. I don't want to explain too much, but if I didn't do it, then I didn't do it. Who was it that told you to come find me, cooperate with me, and then use some method to deal with me, causing me to be in my current predicament? I don't want to know who he is, but let me tell you, you must be careful of this person, because if he can do this to me, he can do the same to you. When that day comes, you will understand what I am thinking. However, even if you regret it by then, it will be too late. Drokiski was indeed wavering, but he could not be sure if this was just Wan Guangxiao's explanation. He could not trust them. At most, he would not trust anyone from this day onwards. That way he could ensure that he would not be used by others. Just as Drokiski's mind was in a mess, he suddenly sensed a huge impact coming from beneath the wooden raft. Behind them, a huge swamp crocodile had appeared out of nowhere. The impact caused Drokiski, who was not prepared, to fall into the swamp. Although Drokiski was caught off guard, he was not a simple person. At the same time, he also charged toward the huge swamp crocodile. However, God had played a joke on him at the most critical moment. The mud on the wooden raft made his feet too slippery, causing him to be unable to jump high enough. This caused a fatal mistake in his landing. He was unable to jump onto the swamp crocodile's head, but instead he was lying on the swamp crocodile's upper jaw. The huge swamp crocodile opened its mouth and was about to suck Drokiski into its mouth. At that moment, as long as it bit down, it could easily swallow Drokiski alive. Seeing that the huge stinky mouth was about to bite down, Drokiski let out a roar. His little universe erupted as he used his arms to block the huge bite of the crocodile. Crocodiles were perhaps the most powerful chewers in the world. This had long been proven by scientific research. Biologists had tested many types of crocodiles, and the estuarine crocodile's bite force was the most shocking. That was only a 5-meter-long estuarine crocodile, but what they were facing now was a mysterious swamp crocodile that was twice the size of the estuarine crocodile, with a body length of more than 10 meters. It lived in a swamp that was even worse. The bite force of the estuarine crocodile could reach 3,700 pounds per square inch, which was equivalent to a bite force of more than 16,000 newtons. Perhaps most people had no idea when they saw these numbers. However, if one knew that when a human was eating steak, the bite force was only 100 to 200 pounds per square inch. Even wild beasts such as coyotes, lions, and tigers could only reach a bite force of 1,000 pounds per square inch. Then one would know how amazing the bite force of a crocodile was. Perhaps, other than the great white shark in the ocean, the bite force of a wild beast might be even greater. It was really difficult to find an opponent that was more powerful than a crocodile on land, right? Just like that, Drokiski was able to withstand the force of 3,700 pounds. And he wasn't directly swallowed by the crocodile? Of course, this was impossible. With the strength of a human, even if it was a powerful guy like Drokiski, it was absolutely impossible. Drokiski himself quickly understood. His numb and almost broken arms still persisted in supporting the upper jaw of the swamp crocodile. In front of him, there was also a person sharing the huge bite force with him. And this person was none other than Wan Guangxiao. At the most critical moment, Wan Guangxiao rushed into the mouth of the giant crocodile without hesitation and shared the huge bite force. This force also made his arms numb and painful, and he almost couldn't hold on. Drokiski was completely stunned in an instant. He even lost the ability to react. Just before the giant crocodile attacked again, Wan Guangxiao pulled Drokiski and quickly jumped out of the giant crocodile's mouth. Immediately after, the terrifying sound of the crocodile's huge bite and the swamp mud splashed up behind them. Drokiski's feet stepped on the wooden raft again. And only then did he realize that he had saved his life. He really didn't expect Wan Guangxiao to save him in such a dangerous situation. He owed him a big favor. Let me emphasize, I saved you not because I'm sorry for taking your rattan. I didn't take the rattan, and I didn't use it on our raft. Wan Guangxiao said indifferently, I saved you because of the current situation. No matter which one of us dies, everyone here won't be able to go back alive. Think about your own responsibilities. After saying that, Wan Guangxiao jumped up again and directly attacked the eyes of the giant crocodile in front of him. To make them lose their ability to fight, blinding them was the easiest thing to do. However, this was very dangerous because after you blinded the crocodile's first eye, you had to quickly blind its second eye. Otherwise, it would be very troublesome. This time, the crocodile was exceptionally huge. Even though Wan Guangxiao was experienced, it was very difficult to blind both eyes of the crocodile in just 1 or 2 seconds. He needed help, but now that everyone was in a state of fear, No one had a clear sense of battle. Therefore, he could only gamble with his life. Otherwise, he wouldn't even have a chance to live. But just as he was about to pounce on the crocodile's head, Drokiski followed closely behind. He didn't say much, and only said 2 words, "Sorry." The 2 of them blinded the left and right eyes of the giant crocodile at almost the same time. The giant crocodile rolled crazily and aimlessly crashed into the depths of the swamp. Chapter 1356. Although it was their first time working together, Wan Guangxiao and Drokiski had a tacit understanding, so they were able to get rid of the swamp crocodile very quickly. This undoubtedly bought valuable time for the others. At least the raft did not fall apart under Sawatika's desperate protection. Wan Guangxiao didn't say anything to Drokiski. He quickly returned to his own wooden raft. No matter if the Russians attacked them or not, he would protect the wooden raft with his life. He was responsible for the lives of everyone on the wooden raft. This was the only thing he could do, and the only thing he wanted to do. He saved Drokiski not for them, but for himself. Now it was up to Drokiski to see if he would appreciate it. "Why did you save me?" Drokiski asked straightforwardly. "If I didn't attack you, maybe you wouldn't be in so much trouble now. If you were all killed by the crocodile, then we wouldn't have any hope of survival." Wan Guangxiao answered without hiding anything. "If I saved you, maybe you would know how to repay the kindness and help us. We would still have a 50% chance of survival. If I didn't save you, our chances of survival would be 0. What a straightforward answer. Drokiski really did not expect Wan Guangxiao to be so straightforward. This person was really not hypocritical at all. "Now my judgment is that if you abandon us, our chances of survival will be 0, and without protection behind you, your chances of survival will only be 50%. Wan Guangxiao continued. "If you lend us a hand, our chances of survival will be 50%, and with our protection behind you, your chances of survival will be more than 80%. After all, the way back will be safer and the threat will only exist behind us." Drokiski also understood this point. The reason was very simple. Now, even if he did not believe Wan Guangxiao's character, he should consider his brothers. What's more, it was really hard for him to doubt someone who had saved his life. Wan Guangxiao was a straightforward person. He dared to take responsibility for his actions. If he had really killed his men and taken away their vines, he probably wouldn't have tried to cover it up like this. "Brothers, help!" Drokiski didn't waste any more words and directly passed down the order for everyone to work together to solve the problem of the scattered wooden rafts. 30 people were in the center of the swamp. Wan Guangxiao led some people to repair the wooden raft, while Drokiski led some people to defend against the surrounding dangers. Because it was inconvenient to move in the swamp, it took more than an hour to reattach the raft. In the past hour, Drokiski had gradually realized Adler's scheme. "I'm really sorry about this. It was my misjudgment that led to this. I hope you can accept my apology." Drokiski was still very sincere. "Also, I want to thank you. Thank you for saving me just now, regardless of our past enmity. Even if you said it was for your own 50% chance of survival, I still have to thank you. If it wasn't for you, me and my brothers." Wan Guangxiao didn't respond. Let bygones be bygones. Since you're able to figure out why this happened and who caused it, then it's a good ending. At least now you're standing up to help me. Even if you're just thinking for your own people, I have to thank you on behalf of my dozen or so brothers for giving them a chance to survive. Drokiski's heart seemed to be blocked by something. It was very uncomfortable, very uncomfortable. The feeling of being used by the Americans made him very uncomfortable. And after he suddenly realized that Wan Guangxiao was a person he could make friends with, he found that because of what he did, there was a gap between him and Wan Guangxiao in their hearts. Sometimes, many people don't get to know each other without fighting. But those who could become brothers after fighting were not the majority. Most people would feel resistance in their hearts after fighting. At least, Drokiski couldn't feel any enthusiasm from Wan Guangxiao. At this moment, Wan Guangxiao had no friendship with him at all. He was just constantly making judgments, calculating the odds, and making choices that were beneficial to him. "If you don't mind, I want to ally with you again. This time I'm sincere. Drokoski said, since Ad can use me to deal with you the first time, he can use others to deal with you as well. I've been used by him before, so I'll be on your side. If we unite, he definitely won't dare to act recklessly. Wan Guangxiao smiled slightly. Whether you're sincere or not, I won't choose an ally. After a pause, Wan Guangxiao continued. In this kind of living environment, there are no eternal friends and no eternal enemies. We can work together for a common thing, but I can't guarantee that you won't do anything to me behind my back for your own benefit. Drokoski lowered his head and was silent for a while. Indeed, once bitten, twice shy. If it were him, he wouldn't choose to ally with a person who just wanted to kill them. Even if it wasn't for himself, it was for the sake of his brothers. The risk of this kind of trust was too great. It wasn't that Wan Guangxiao didn't want to get such an alliance. Drokoski's words were indeed true. If they formed an alliance, Ad would definitely not dare to act rashly. However, how could he believe that Drokoski and the others were not as dangerous as Ad? Although Drokowski was used too easily by Ade this time, his mind was very clear. He could change his mind quickly and make new judgments quickly. He knew what was best for him. It was really too dangerous to cooperate with such a person. Wan Guangxiao didn't want these people to sacrifice the lives of the 200 people in his hands. Everyone had their own ideas, so it was difficult to reach a consensus to share the burden. At least Wan Guangxiao wouldn't easily trust anyone now. Even among the people in his own team, there were only a few that he could trust. Most of them followed him because there was profit to be made. It was all because of his decisions. His judgment could increase their chances of survival and give them a chance to get that damn badge. If it weren't for this, how could these people work with him without complaint? Finally, the repair work of the wooden raft was completed. The 30 people from both sides finally carefully embarked on the return journey. It had been more than 5 hours since Wan Guangxiao and Drokoski left with their people. The people who were anxiously waiting for news began to fall into despair. Once the first wave of people went in and there was no news, it would be a huge blow to them. The threat of death was like a lingering dark cloud above their heads. Ad's mood was much more comfortable. Although he was afraid of the death swamp, compared to Wan Guangxiao and Drokoski dying in the swamp, it was just a small matter. After getting rid of these two teams that were a threat to him, everything in the training center would be in his hands. As for looking for the badge in the swamp, he could hold on patiently. He believed that there would always be someone who couldn't sit still. The person who persisted to the end would be able to absorb all the experience. Just like now, the raft battle method would be eliminated. However, just as Ad was feeling proud in his heart, the figures of the returnees finally appeared in the swamp. The originally disappointed crowd also exclaimed in excitement. Everything happened too suddenly. Ad couldn't believe his eyes. 30 people were actually unscathed. Chapter 1357. How could this be? Could it be that Drokoski didn't do anything? Adler was angered by these triumphant fellows, but when Drokoski's gaze landed on him, the moment their eyes met, he felt a strong murderous intent. If it weren't for the current situation where they were facing such a troublesome environment, Adler was sure that Drokoski would definitely come and fight him to the death. There was too much information in that gaze. Adler was sure that Drokoski didn't have any suspicions about Wan Guangxiao at all. All of the problems would be pointed directly at him. Damn it! Adler angrily punched the tree trunk, and the leaves fell, making him seem particularly isolated. Just like Adler's American faction, they seemed so isolated and helpless in the entire camp. Wan Guangxiao and Drokoski relied on their first exploration of the swamp to gain everyone's admiration. Even in the American faction, some people began to question Adler's leadership ability. Although the first exploration of the swamp didn't bring much information, it was absolutely certain that the central swamp was dangerous. At the very least, it was impossible for two teams to establish a foothold in the central swamp. They needed more people to deal with the giant swamp crocodiles that could appear at any time. Fortunately, these crocodiles were not dangerous other than their large size and powerful attack power. Of course, there was also good news. which was that it proved that a large wooden raft could allow 15 people to stay on it for a period of time. As long as there were enough people, they could still defeat the swamp crocodiles and survive under the condition that their defense and attack power were guaranteed. As for the badges, they still didn't see a single one. To complete the survival training, killing crocodiles wasn't enough to prove anything. Finding the badges was the final key. In the face of this problem, everyone could only smile bitterly. After returning, Wan Guangxiao immediately began to reformulate the exploration plan of the swamp, and this time he excluded Drokiski's people from the exploration plan. He had more than 200 people in his hands. As long as there were enough wooden rafts, they could be divided into 13 teams and enter the swamp to explore according to the corresponding formation. It was still very possible to complete the mission. Of course, there were also people who flinched at the last moment. In the end, only 130 people decided to follow Wan Guangxiao into the swamp again. They were divided into 9 small teams, and the 9 teams advanced in a 9-square grid formation. Wan Guangxiao did not assign himself to the safest support team in the center. Instead, he assigned himself to the first small team to explore the swamp first. The support team in the center was left to Sawatika to take care of. Wan Guangxiao decided to give the central support team to Sawatika, not only because of Sawatika's loyalty, but also because his adaptability was enough to make him qualified for this position. Having him in the center of the team was also a responsibility to everyone. At least, Wan Guangxiao believed that Sawatika wouldn't betray him. As long as he could guarantee this, it was enough. At this time, it was impossible for Drokiski to talk about cooperation and alliance with Wan Guangxiao. Even if Wan Guangxiao wouldn't give him any embarrassing rejection, he would be too embarrassed to go. He could only make up his mind. When Wan Guangxiao and the others set off, he would shamelessly follow behind. If they encountered danger, he would take the initiative to help. As for the badge, he wouldn't be so anxious. If Wan Guangxiao's people could find it, it wouldn't be too late for him to take his own people to slowly search for it. This was Drokiski's only way. The European Union people had the same idea as him. Although they had a large number of people, they weren't enough to arrange into a 9-square grid formation. For this reason, when Drokiski was in trouble, the representative of the European Union came to him to propose a cooperation relationship. This made Drokiski very excited, but in the face of these guys who he didn't know the details of, it was difficult for Drokiski to show his back to these people. Similarly, these people couldn't let Drokiski's people occupy the advantageous position of the 9-square grid formation. Now it could be said that everyone had their own ulterior motives. But in the end, Drokiski and the European Union people reached a consensus. The most dangerous position of the vanguard and the central support team would be in charge of them. The 7 wooden rafts of the European Union were arranged at the back on both sides. This plan should be the most suitable, and the European Union people agreed after consideration. As for the other scattered teams, some simply gave up directly, and some decided to follow the main force without fear of death. Some teams were too small to even form a 15-person team, so they could only seek cooperation with other teams. The factor of distrust in this kind of cooperation was quite large. But in the end, the number of people who participated in the second exploration of the swamp reached 21 wooden rafts, and more than 300 people participated. There were also more than 100 people who announced their complete withdrawal. They wouldn't play with their lives. Adler's American faction still didn't move. Their people were enough to form a 9-square grid formation to explore and move forward. But he didn't march with the main force, and this was due to Adler's caution. He wasn't afraid of death, but he believed that there was a certain amount of danger in the swamp. It was like a minefield. Adler hoped that the other teams would go first, and when the minefield was less, he would bring his people in. This would ensure that his team could have the highest chance of survival. Of course, this also had a disadvantage, and that was that the badges would become fewer and fewer. Adler wasn't the only one who could see this, his people could also see this. Neil was the first to raise this question. If we just follow behind, it will be the hardest to get the badges. Adler, you have to think clearly. Adler wasn't in a hurry. At this point, many people have already given up. I believe that the badges will be enough. If we really can't find the badges, then we'll use other methods to solve the problem. Neil was startled. He realized that Adler's so-called other methods were to snatch the badges that others found. This method was his favorite. He liked the joy of depriving others of their power, especially when it came to stripping Wan Guangxiao's badge. If it really came to that point, Neville would definitely personally take the badge from Wan Guangxiao's hands. With Adler's assurance, Neil finally felt a little more at ease. After all, Adler was Adler. He would always give them a reason to feel at ease. As long as he had Adler's assurance, Neil wouldn't mess around. The second journey finally began. Wan Guangxiao put down the matter of settling accounts with Adler. The first thing to solve was the problem of the badges. His thinking was different from Adler's. After all, Adler's team was an American team that was completely convinced by him. His team, on the other hand, was an international mess. Adler's people could endure for a long time, but only a few people in Wan Guangxiao's team could endure. If he didn't find a way to get the badges as soon as possible, his team would begin to disperse. Once that happened, his biggest team would only exist in name. Only by getting the badges as soon as possible, even if it was only one, then he could persuade these people to continue to explore with him. A lot of things couldn't just be seen on the surface. It seemed that the biggest team, the strongest team, might not be as cohesive as the smallest team. The more people there were, the more difficult it was to control the team. No one knew this better than Wan Guangxiao. It could be seen when the 9-square grid formation was arranged. Everyone wanted to stand in the safest camp. If it wasn't for him taking the lead, maybe no one would be able to stand in this camp. Want to live, want to be safe, and want to get the badges. How could there be such a good thing? Wan Guangxiao did not hesitate to point this out. The vanguard was the easiest to get the badges. It was also because of this sentence that a part of the people took the initiative to join the vanguard. It was also because of this that it proved that the people in the vanguard were not necessarily the bravest. Perhaps they wanted to get the badges as soon as possible and end the survival training as soon as possible. Chapter 1358. Wan Guangxiao, who led the army into the swamp, and Adler, who didn't make a move, became the two people with completely different views after entering the central swamp, and received the most support. The sharp contrast between these two people obviously entered the eyes of the senior management of the International Special Forces Training Center. The remotely controlled flight monitoring equipment would pass through the central swamp from time to time, so that the people above could observe the movements at any time and better control the whole situation. After all, it was impossible for the people above to really let so many people be annihilated inside. It was necessary to eliminate some people, and the elites of the elites would also be protected. How many people could hold on to the last moment here? I'm afraid that the people above didn't give a clear calculation. This was what Adler thought in his heart. He wouldn't let the people above filter them like chess pieces. He wanted to be the master of his own life. No matter what, he absolutely couldn't become a person who was abandoned. Even if there were many people who couldn't understand him after this mission and categorized him as a coward, he would never change his judgment. Because in the bottom of Adler's heart, there was still one thing he suspected. And he had never mentioned this to anyone. Because from the beginning to the end, he never believed that there was a damn badge in this swamp. He didn't even mention this to Neve. Because he knew that once this hypothesis was confirmed, it was likely to cause unrest. It was good that he knew it himself. Watching Wan Guangxiao seriously march into the damn swamp for the first time and return in vain, Adler was even more certain of his thoughts. If their second march was still in vain, Adler would be even more certain of his suspicions. Nearly 1,000 badges. Even if they were unlucky, so many people would always find one, right? If they didn't find one, then it could only be said that this matter was unreliable. As for how things would develop, all Adler had to do was wait, patiently wait for a result he wanted. And those who had opinions, he left them to Neve to deal with. If they couldn't be reasoned with, then they could only use force to subdue them. This was what Neve was best at, so Adler wasn't worried that he couldn't handle these guys. At the same time, Wan Guangxiao, who entered the central swamp for the second time, was also thinking about the same problem. That was, if this time they still couldn't get the badge. What the people above were thinking and what they wanted, he really didn't know. Wang Guangxiao hoped to get the badge. Otherwise, this kind of blow to everyone's heart was too huge. He couldn't imagine how many people would not be able to accept this result. If that was the case, Wang Guangxiao could only say that this training center wanted them to accept too many things. If they couldn't accept it, they could only choose to leave. There was really no other way. Wang Guangxiao naturally didn't want the ending to be so cruel, so he used all his strength to search for badges in the swamp. Even if he only found one, it would bring hope to everyone present. If there wasn't even the most basic hope, then what was the point of talking about the training mission? But reality gave Wang Guangxiao a heavy punch. It made him understand that things he hoped for would not necessarily develop according to his wishes. Perhaps, the more he hoped for something, the more it would develop in the opposite direction. Now Wang Guangxiao was facing such a situation. The more he wanted to find something, the more he felt that it was impossible to find it as time went by. Finally, such a large team had been collecting in the central swamp for a day. With more than 30 people injured, they still couldn't find the badge. They even cut open the entire stomach of the crocodile and dug out the rotten and stinky things in the crocodile's stomach, but they still didn't see half a badge. Bastard! It seemed that they were really fooled by the people above. The purpose of the so-called survival training was achieved, but they still had to bear the frustration of the mission failure in the end. However, this sense of frustration was also part of the mission training. How cruel the training center was, Wang Guangxiao really didn't want to expose it. After all, so many people still didn't understand the true meaning and purpose of the training mission. Let them experience the crisis of survival, experience frustration, and experience everything that normal people couldn't accept. That was their true goal. This was a place that tortured people to death. Wang Guangxiao smiled bitterly. At this moment, he doubted whether the choice of this place was right or not. However, these experiences were indeed extraordinary. In this life, he didn't want to experience this feeling again. Finally, someone couldn't bear the result of not finding the badge and completely broke out. Wang Guangxiao, is there any hope? If there is no hope, I hope you can tell us. Don't let us wait like this without any hope. If you can't give us an answer, why did you bring us here? Yes. We sacrificed so much on the way here. You have to give us an answer, right? If we can't even get a badge, then wouldn't our sacrifice be meaningless? Once the first person took the lead, there would be more people standing up and questioning. This was an inevitable situation. Wang Guangxiao had long been aware and prepared for this. He suddenly showed a very relaxed smile and said lightly to everyone present, "In fact, each of us has completed this survival training mission. There is no such thing as a badge of honor. The price we paid was sacrifice, fear, and the suffering of every second of every day. But, if we don't experience this, how can we become a true special soldier?" Although it was a plain statement, it deeply stirred up everyone's heart. That kind of oppressive explosion was like a fire spreading on a prairie, completely uncontrollable. But suddenly, everything seemed to disappear in an instant. The experience of the past few days, fear, sacrifice, and especially the pain of losing their companions, all seemed to disappear in an instant. Everyone felt as if they had just had a long nightmare. When they woke up, they realized that everything was illusory and illusory. However, the things that had been lost were all real. Those who could understand the real purpose of this training calmly showed a bitter smile. Since they had chosen this path, they had to accept everything and know how to bear everything. As for those who couldn't understand, they all revealed bitter smiles in their calmness. It was really too bitter, too bitter. When Wang Guangxiao led the team back without any achievement, Ade also quickly led people into the swamp. Only he knew that this was just a formality. Even when Neville finally understood that the so-called badge was just a waste, he was shocked and couldn't accept it. But he was very clear that Ade must have figured out this matter long ago. But why didn't he say it? Looking at all the surviving brothers, Neville understood that Adele's judgment was still correct. For the sake of the overall situation, some things, even if they were seen through, should be kept in the deepest part of the heart forever. This was the first battle between Wang Guangxiao and Ade after they met. Although they didn't confront each other openly, it also reflected the different leadership abilities of the two people. At that time, Ade regarded Wang Guangxiao as a man who might become his lifelong rival. And Wang Guangxiao also understood at that time that Ade would be the guy who would cause trouble for him in the future. Wang Guangxiao had received 2 years of leadership training at the International Special Forces Training Center. Until the time of his departure, he and Adler were evenly matched in their competition. Because of the existence of Wang Guangxiao, the international alliance in the training center also took shape, and the situation was no longer dominated by the American faction. It could be said that in the 2 years in the training center, the final winner was Wang Guangxiao. When they all left the training center and served their respective countries, the two also fought many times. Of course, fighting was not only reflected in the war. In the end, it could be said that both sides had their wins and losses. No one always had the upper hand, and no one always suffered. It was a tie. Unexpectedly, after so many years, when they had all retired behind the scenes, they still had the opportunity to fight. Chapter 1359. Wang Guangxiao's story was very long, and Su Yin had only heard a small part of it. It was all because of this old friend that Wang Guangxiao's memories were evoked. Today he was already the head captain of Huaxia's Dragon Brigade. He had the commander's seal and led Huaxia's most powerful special forces. Adler was also the general of all the special forces and special operations agents in the entire United States. He was behind the scenes, and the disciples he trained had all inherited his mantle. They were cunning and meticulous, and all of their actions were carried out with the goal of achieving their goals. Just based on these people's actions, Wang Guangxiao could determine that all of this was under Adler's command. He didn't think that the most important young man in the Dragon Brigade would actually meet Adler's disciple. Fate really made fools of people. Fortunately, in the previous 2 confrontations, Su Yin didn't lose face for Wang Guangxiao. It was good that he was able to give Adler a fierce blow. Presumably, Adler had also figured out that the only person who could make his subordinates fall into such a sorry state could only be a good kid that he, Wang Guangxiao, had personally taught. Just thinking about Adler being able to realize this, Wang Guangxiao secretly felt very happy. Even if he was no longer the hot-blooded youth of the past, he still cared about winning or losing against this old rival. Even if they had all become old men, as old men, they still cared more about face. Head captain, since you're so sure that the person behind the scenes is your old rival, then what do you think his next move will be? The only thing Su Yin cared about now was what was going to happen next. The demonized anger in his heart had been suppressed. He was waiting for the opportunity to take revenge. No matter who the opponent was, no matter how high his position was, the fan Shuang died because of him. This hatred, Su Yin couldn't just let it go. Compared to the past, Su Yin had learned to control. Even though this kind of control was something he couldn't control, he was now able to endure it. Was it because of the impact that Guoguo brought to him? Or was it because his mind was more mature than before? Perhaps there were both possibilities. However, Su Yin's calmness was only on the surface. The anger was still in his heart, and it couldn't be easily resolved. This hatred, Su Yin could only dissolve the anger in his heart after completely defeating the other party. Only then could he ensure that he would not turn into a demon. If he couldn't completely defeat the other side, Su Yin couldn't imagine how long he could hold on. This pain in his heart had to be dealt with as soon as possible. Adler's trump card will always be played at the last moment. In the current battle for Matthew, he has already lost 2 rounds in a row. Since Douglas and Carolyn can hold high positions in the CIA and the Federal Investigation Agency, it means that they are not simple people. Wang Guangxiao smiled and said, "In the case of Matthew, it is not hard to see that he has already played his trump card from the start. Furthermore, he has played 2 trump cards in a row. However, he lost both of them. If you were him, what would you do?" Su Yin frowned and said, "He has already played his trump card. What else can he do? In the U.S., other than the CIA and the Federal Investigation Agency, there are some capable special agents in the Department of Defense. Their special forces were badly damaged by the terrorists in the Middle East battlefield. They shouldn't be able to arrange for anyone to come out for the time being, right? Wang Guangxiao nodded and said, "Indeed, the U.S. Special Forces are now involved in the politics of other countries. As for the special agents of the Department of Defense, they will not come out so easily. The crisis the U.S. is facing is also very big. Who knows how many pairs of eyes are watching them? They must keep most of their powerful forces to deal with the terrorist attacks at any time." "So what you are saying is that in addition to these people, he has other people who can be used," Su Yin said coolly. "Is he grooming them himself?" "Yes." Wang Guangxiao nodded and said, "I heard that over the years, he has taken in several disciples that he is proud of. Although these guys don't have much status, once the big branches under him are in need of manpower, there will always be people in his hands who can step forward. These people who can step forward must have been personally trained by him. To be able to lead a special agent when they just made their debut, they are naturally not simple. Adler had a few elites that he trained independently. Wang Guangxiao had known about this for a long time. Moreover, these people had all participated in the human experiments of the U.S. Special Drug Research and Development Center. It could be said that they were a group of loyal and fearless soldiers. Wang Guangxiao really didn't know what method Adler used to train these people, but he definitely used the methods of the International Special Forces Training Center to push people to their limits again and again. Although Wang Guangxiao also came from the International Special Forces Training Center, after he returned to Huaxia, he had never used such extreme methods on the Dragon Brigade's training. He admitted that such extreme methods could make people break through their limits, but it would also leave a serious psychological shadow. Those who could break through this boundary point could naturally bear it, but if they couldn't break through that boundary point, their whole life would be ruined by the shadow. Every day, they would talk about human rights and humiliate Huaxia for not paying attention to human rights. However, sometimes, it was the exact opposite. Wang Guangxiao wouldn't use brainwashing methods to train people for some goals. Although this method could ensure that those who stayed would be the elites of the elites, it would also cause a large number of people to lose the power they originally should have. Although not everyone in the Dragon Brigade was the elite of the elite, if some methods were used to push people to their limits, perhaps some of them could be trained to be even more elite. However, it would cause a large number of people to completely lose their colors in the future. When Wang Guangxiao left the International Special Forces Training Center, many people who entered and left with him had a complete mental breakdown the moment they stepped out of the center. They were completely unable to control their actions and emotions. He remembered it clearly. If it weren't for a large number of elite soldiers who lost their minds and completely broke down in this training center every year, this training center wouldn't have been completely closed 20 years ago. This Special Forces Training Center was proposed by the United States and implemented by the United Nations. In the end, it was sued to the International Court of Justice for harming human rights. Although this place was disbanded, the people who had a mental breakdown because of the existence of this training center might still be struggling at death's door in some corner of the world. It should be known that these people were elites and talents, but they were crippled forever. The International Special Forces Training Center was abolished, but the Americans didn't give up on this method of selecting the elites among the elites. Since this kind of harming human rights was not allowed to exist internationally in training, they had no choice but to carry it out secretly. The person behind all this was the #1 person in the International Special Forces Training Center, who was highly regarded by all the senior leaders of the training center, Adler. Ever since Adler was given the title of general, he devoted all his efforts to the work of training special warfare agents for the United States. Today, in the eyes of the senior leaders of the United States, Adler was a general with great achievements. In the eyes of the people below him, he was a legend among legends. And what kind of methods he used to do everything, only he himself knew. Only those who had undergone his training under him knew. However, those who could bear all this and stay wouldn't expose his methods that violated human rights. And those who couldn't bear all this and were abandoned could only talk nonsense when they had a mental breakdown. No one would believe them. Although he has already played 2 trump cards, we still can't relax our vigilance. Wang Guangxiao smiled slightly. Maybe there are bombs in his cards. If a bomb holds our cards in our hands, he will throw his cards away and leave. Su Yun's eyes were unusually firm. That's not necessarily true. If they have bombs, then we have trump cards. In the end, it's really not certain who will be able to leave. Ha ha ha. Good boy. I like your character, just like when I was young. Wang Guangxiao patted Su Yun's shoulder. Su Yun smiled bitterly. He really didn't dare to accept this. When Wang Guangxiao was young, he had the ability to lead the international special forces to compete with Adler's faction. He didn't have this ability. Chapter 1360. No matter what kind of people Adler arranged, all they had to do was wait. Wang Guangxiao couldn't draw up any battle strategy out of thin air. Moreover, he believed that if it was someone Adler could arrange, he would definitely let them deal with things according to their own judgment. Since Adler could be so assured with the people he trained, then why couldn't Wang Guangxiao be assured with the people he trained? He could also let Su Yun do whatever he wanted. All decisions could be made according to his own inner thoughts. Wang Guangxiao was such a person. He didn't believe that the people he trained would lose to the people trained by Adler. The elites that Adler nurtured were all forced to their limits. The elites he trained relied on their own amazing willpower to take the initiative to break through the limit. This point was even more vividly reflected in Su Yun. Although Wang Guangxiao didn't pressure Su Yun and the others mentally, Su Yun had already experienced what he should have experienced. Moreover, the kind of loss that Su Yun experienced was real. It happened in actual combat, not forced out in training. Therefore, the kind of loss he experienced, that kind of pain, was definitely more real and painful than Adler's people. Wang Guangxiao was very clear that although he didn't do these extreme training under mental pressure, Su Yun had experienced what he should have experienced. These experiences were painful, but he had to admit that they were so precious. Without these experiences, Su Yun wouldn't have become who he was today. The loss behind growth was always unbearable. No matter what, it was like this. Whether it was career or love, it was the same. After leaving Wang Guangxiao's office, Wang Yi said to Su Yun, "Yu Marin has reminded me many times. Once there is nothing here, I will let you go and find her. She is very worried about your body." Especially after hearing about Shuang Er's accident, she was even more worried. When it came to Fan Shuang Wang Yi was somewhat hesitant. He believed in Su Yun's current tolerance, but he was also worried about how much tolerance Su Yun had. The things that happened that year were in front of Wang Yi. He didn't want Su Yun to repeat the same mistakes. That would really destroy him completely. Unexpectedly, fate was so torturous that Su Yun had to accept this kind of experience twice. Maybe if it was someone else it would be fine, but it was Su Yun. This guy, the blood in his body was that man's blood. Even his personality was so similar. The thing they couldn't tolerate the most was losing someone by their side. Once they lost someone by their side, they would do anything. And I understand. Su Yun nodded. Yu Marin must be very worried about him now. Su Yun was also very clear about this. If he wasn't in a hurry to see Wang Guangxiao, he would have gone directly to Yu Marin. Su Yun was very clear about the feeling of being worried about someone. He didn't want Yu Marin to be worried about him like that. Before Wang Yi said his goodbyes, he patted Su Yun's shoulder heavily and said to him, "In one's life, one will encounter many seemingly insurmountable hurdles. But once one crosses these hurdles, one will realize that it is not a big deal. I can understand your feelings now. If I were you, I might be even angrier than you. You can hide your anger and even make it undetectable. This is a very good point. It's just that even if it is hidden and undetectable, it still exists." Su Yun smiled. "Master, you've watched me grow up since I was a child. You know very well what kind of personality I have. There are some things that once I have decided on, there must be an outcome. In the beginning, this matter might have just been a hidden struggle caused by Matthew. But now they continue to harass me again and again. I will definitely make them pay the price." Wang Yi nodded. "Very good. It's very good to have this idea. I support you. But you must control your emotions. The longer you suppress your negative emotions, the easier it is to lose control when they erupt. No matter what happens, you have to remember what I said. Su Yun nodded. Wang Yi's concern made him feel warm all over. At this time, Wang Yi's words were very, very important to him. Perhaps a reminder would allow him to suppress his originally unbearable emotions at this critical moment. And this time's forbearance could very well be the turning point that would change everything. Su Yun was fortunate enough to be in the Dragon Brigade. This was his lifetime's fortune. If it weren't for this place, Su Yun wouldn't dare to believe his own life. Looking at Su Yun's back as he left, Wang Yi couldn't help but sigh in his heart. They really are too similar. If you had the chance to see your son grow up to be like this today, you would definitely be very pleased that you entrusted him to Zhang Taisui. Ha ha ha, when Zhang Taisui sent this brat to the Dragon Brigade, he still didn't believe us. Now if there is a spirit in the netherworld, he should be satisfied to see this brat's current appearance. After a pause, Wang Yi shook his head again. Old Taisui, maybe you just want us to train him into an ordinary member of the Special Forces, and make him more tenacious than the average person. That way, he would be able to go back and take over your entertainment empire. If that's the case, he can also be like an ordinary person, struggling for his career and enjoying his own love and friendship. Ha ha ha, I just didn't expect this brat to be so good for you. After all, he is your godson. Are you afraid that if he doesn't get first place in something, he will lose face for you? Su Yun wasn't just afraid of losing face for Zhang Taisui. He was also afraid of losing face for his father whom he had never met. The promise that he once said that as long as he was strong enough, he would have a chance to meet his father was now not even worth mentioning in Su Yun's eyes. He now felt that this was just a psychological sustenance for him back then. Now that he had grown up, he no longer needed this psychological sustenance. Ever since she knew that Su Yun had returned to the brigade, Yu Marin had been anxiously waiting. Finally, after suffering for so long, she received a notice in the office that Yin Long had come to look for her, and was waiting for her downstairs. Because of Su Yun's special situation, and because Yu Marin had successfully saved Su Yun's life, Wang Guangxiao had already approved that no matter when, as long as Su Yun needed Yu Marin, no one could stop him for any reason. This was an order. Even if Yu Marin participated in a major medical experiment, unless she insisted, no one could force her to continue working. Finally, the person she was worried about was here. Yu Marin rushed out of the office and went directly to the medical department building. Su Yun was waiting foolishly at the door. When he saw Yu Marin's anxious look, he hurried forward and said, "Why are you in such a hurry? Aren't I fine? I've been with the brigade since I came back, so I couldn't come to see you earlier." "It doesn't matter if you see me or not," Yu Marin said worriedly. "As long as you're fine. How are you now? Is everything okay? Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere? You have to tell me. Forget it, you'd better go to the dormitory with me. I'll take your pulse. No matter what, you should pay more attention. There's no harm in doing so." Although Su Yun emphasized that he was fine, Yu Marin was still worried. She had to diagnose Su Yun personally. Only then could she be at ease. Su Yun couldn't change her mind. He could only let Yu Marin personally confirm that his emotions didn't affect his heart, and wouldn't have any negative effects on him. Only then did Yu Marin breathe a sigh of relief. During the whole process, Yu Marin didn't mention a word about the sacrifice in this operation. In fact, Su Yun didn't dare to say it, because he was afraid that he wasn't the only one who had this problem. Yu Marin must also have this problem. After all, her brother also sacrificed himself for the organization under the name of Yin Long. Although it was a long time ago, Su Yun understood the principle that it was hard to get rid of a problem. Chapter 1361. At Yanjing Airport, Christian had already stepped out of the plane. Dressed in a suit, he looked particularly energetic. It wasn't his first time coming to Huaxia, but it was his first time coming to a cosmopolitan city like Huaxia. The first time he came to Huaxia, General Adler arranged for them to overcome fear training. They went to Huaxia's Sichuan Shijiang area, which was definitely his most terrifying experience. Let's talk about zombies first. This thing was definitely an eternal horror topic in the supernatural world. Whether it was the black-clothed, white-faced, red-lipped aristocratic vampire in Europe, or the bloodthirsty zombie living dead in the United States, or the Huaxia-style jumping corpse with its hands stretched forward and braided hair. They were all classic legends. Were these things real or not? Whether it was feudal superstition or scientific reasoning, the world was so big. Whether these mysterious things that couldn't be explained by science were real or not, only people who had seen them could be sure. Unfortunately, very few of those who had seen it had survived, right? But under scientific research, it was found that vampires might just be patients with porphyria. Because of genetic variation or environmental toxicity during the production of heme, the photosensitive pigment produced would turn into a strong toxin once exposed to sunlight. Porphyrin was a photosensitive pigment that would gather on the skin, bones, and teeth. In the most severe cases of porphyria, porphyrin would nibble away at the tissue and muscle near the gathering area, causing the patient to be severely anemic, facial organs to corrode, and urine to appear purplish red. It was very terrifying. And for most patients with porphyria, blood transfusion and heme could effectively relieve symptoms, and it was still the mainstream treatment method. But heme was very tenacious and could still be absorbed by the small intestine through the digestive tract. This meant that, at least in theory, the ancient patients with porphyria could make themselves feel better by sucking or drinking blood. Because of this reason, the vampires in the movies might not really exist in this world. Therefore, it was impossible for Adler to find the legendary vampires to undergo psychological training to overcome fear. Also, those extremely disgusting walking corpses in the American zombie movies, people who have seen movies like Resident Evil and The Walking Dead should be disgusted by those things. And those things really existed, so it shouldn't be as disgusting as the movies. It was said that it was not the resurrection of the dead, but the result of using strong drugs to knock out the victim, and then using hallucinogenic drugs and hypnosis to control the victim. For example, in Haiti, there were many legends about zombies. In fact, wizards used drugs to knock out the victims, and then used hallucinations and hypnosis to control the victims. Therefore, it would be difficult for Adler to achieve his goal by using these two things as training to overcome fear. Huaxia's zombies naturally became Adler's first choice. They knew nothing about these ancient and mysterious creatures from Huaxia. Adler received real and effective news. An 8-year-old boy from Huaxia fainted on the way to school for no reason. After that, the child did not behave strangely. His family thought that it was nothing serious and that it was just an accident, so they did not pay attention to it. But the next day, the boy convulsed and fainted again on his way to school. His family hurriedly sent him to a nearby hospital for a checkup. They were told that the child was fine. Since then, the child's illness had flared up every few days. Every time it flared up, he would faint first, and then he would make some strange movements. Often, his 2 hands would be stretched straight, his 5 fingers closed together, his palms open, and sometimes he would stretch out 2 fingers to make powerful gestures, dancing in the air. When it happened, the expression on the child's face was abnormally angry. He used all his strength to open his teeth and let out a low growl. The length of the coma varied. Sometimes it was a few minutes, sometimes it was even a few hours. The most incredible thing was that, other than the fact that he would bare his fangs and brandish his claws, he had one thing in common with the legendary zombies, and that was that he loved to drink blood. The first time the family found out about the boy's hobby was when he had his 3rd illness. At that time, the previous 2 illnesses had made the family somewhat prepared. After the boy's 3rd illness, the family hurriedly found a local doctor to treat the child with superstitious methods. When the doctor smeared dog blood on Xu Xiao's forehead, it was originally just a measure to ward off evil spirits. Unexpectedly, Xu Xiao became spirited when he smelled the blood. He reached out his hand to wipe off the dog blood on his forehead and greedily sucked it. All of this even led to the intervention of a certain science program. The scientific conclusion was that the boy was in a state of hysteria. Obviously, Adler did not believe this answer. He had heard some things about zombies in Huaxia before. For example, at a construction site, an excavator dug out a few zombies. Because they were exposed to the air, the zombies absorbed yang energy to revive. Other than the 2 zombies that were dug to death by the excavator on the spot, the rest of the zombies jumped away. These zombies walked by jumping, and they specialized in sucking human blood. Their speed was very fast, and their strength was even more frightening. Therefore, Adler decided to let his subordinates enter a horror zombie training. Just these rumors alone were enough to make his subordinates afraid. Christian was one of the people who had been arranged to participate in this training to overcome fear. And that time, they seemed to have really courted death, and encountered a really terrifying zombie. That so-called training to overcome fear caused 18 out of the 30 people who came to participate in it to die. The mortality rate was as high as 60%. Although the fear had been overcome, the tragic death rate left a lingering fear in their hearts. Thinking about it now, Christian still felt a little numb in his heart. Of course, other than that, Christian also came to Huaxia a few times, but not once did he not go to places that he did not want to go to again in his life. What Savage Valley, No Man's Land, Eastern Death Zone. The places that General Adler sent him to were all places where he gambled with his life. However, even so, Christian still did not hate General Adler. Instead, he was very grateful to him, because he always thought that if it was not for General Adler's inhuman training, he would not be able to become who he was today. Sometimes, idolization was also a kind of belief. Christian's idol was General Adler. His ultimate goal was to become a person like General Adler, to be loved and supported by millions of people. Therefore, as long as it was General Adler's order, he would definitely not disobey, and definitely not have any doubts. Therefore, Christian's goal in coming to Huaxia this time, he swore to complete it. First of all, his first goal was no longer Kevin Matthew, because General Adler had already made the judgment that it was impossible to find Kevin Matthew directly, unless he forced Kevin Matthew to take the initiative to return to America. To do this, there was a way that would definitely be effective. That was to kill all the people who were friends with Kevin Matthew in Huaxia. To make him realize that these people died because of him. Guilt would definitely make him make the best choice. And Christian's first goal was Su Yun. Although this person was the most difficult to deal with, he was also Kevin Matthew's closest person in Huaxia. Chapter 1362. Therefore, Christian's goal for coming to Huaxia was very clear. Getting rid of Su Yun was the first thing he had to do now. It was the first task he had to complete after coming to Huaxia. This was Adler's request for him. Christian's own judgment told him that getting rid of Su Yun was perhaps the only thing he had to do. After getting rid of Su Yun, other troubles could be easily solved. However, the charm of Huaxia's imperial capital was really too great. Yanjing had gathered many elements of Huaxia culture since the Yuan, Ming, and Qing dynasties. It had many scenic spots and historical sites and cultural landscapes. It could be said that it was the city with the most cultural heritage in the world. This place contained the charm of the Chinese nation, which would shock any foreigner. There was no doubt about this. However, what Christian liked was not these scenic spots and cultural landscapes. He was infatuated with the major nightclubs in Yanjing. The dance club that was the most popular in the United States at night was no longer of interest to Christian. Compared to the entertainment venues of the Westerners, Christian preferred the night culture of the Orient. He knew a thing or two about the charm of Hong Kong's night cattail and Korea's night cattail. However, he had never been to a nightclub in Yanjing. He was especially interested in places like Eastern Carrara and Wang Laogan's Big Stage because these names alone were enough to show the Eastern culture. However, when Christian went there, he found that these shops with Eastern culture names were not as fun as he thought. Adler had been constantly instilling Chinese into them since the day they started training, making them have to master this language well. Adler had repeatedly emphasized that this would be a language that would sweep the world. The whole world would speak this language, so they had to master the basics of the basics. However, even though Christian had been learning Chinese every day, he was still confused when he watched the two-people rotation on the Wang Laogan's Big Stage. He had no idea where the Eastern sense of humor existed. In the end, he decided to go to Suzy WNG Cargo Club Propaganda, these types of nightclubs to look for romantic encounters. In today's society, no matter which country it was, there were too many vain girls. Worshipping foreign things seemed to be a common characteristic of these girls. Therefore, Christian believed that he would be able to find a lot of good romantic encounters before he came up with a battle plan. In the nightclub, all kinds of men and women were intoxicated in the night, venting their inner depression to their heart's content. Dancing with strangers and having intimate contact with all kinds of men and women would make their inner world feel incomparably tense and excited. This kind of tension and excitement definitely brought these men and women not only visual and physical enjoyment, but also the kind of indulgence in their hearts, which allowed them to obtain unprecedented carefreeness. Christian's way of reducing stress was this kind of complete indulgence. Even though he was trained by Adler, he could not escape the tension and suffocation that the pressure brought to him. No one liked the suffocating feeling under great pressure. If Christian said that he was not stressed in the face of this mission, it would definitely be a lie. How could a guy who could completely defeat the 12 heavenly stars be so easy to deal with? Under the dazzling lights, the bodies of men and women intertwined. Christian blended in and soon forgot all the unpleasant past. He liked the feeling of the girls around him constantly getting close to him and letting him touch them. Under the increasingly open social atmosphere, even the East, which had always been old-fashioned and conservative, was now so open. In the vague noises of strong wine and beautiful women, Christian soon forgot that he came to Yenjing to deal with a troublesome man named Su Yun. However, the conversation of a few well-dressed and luxurious young men sitting next to him hit the bottom of Christian's heart. Following the voices, he shifted his gaze to the young men next to him. These young men were either dressed in Armani or Hermes. They were all luxury brands. The wine they drank was also the best in the nightclub. The girls sitting next to them were also the prettiest in the nightclub, the purest in appearance, the sexiest in body, and the most coquettish type. Christian knew that these young men were the legendary rich and handsome second generation of Huaxia, because it was impossible to know what kind of background these people had. Provoking them would definitely be super troublesome. In a place like Yenjing, where there were rich and powerful people everywhere, people like the little conqueror of Haitian silver spears were just scapegoats. Young Master Fu, your brother really knows how to brag. A young man with a caliper hairstyle touched the diamond earrings on his ears and said faintly, "I'm not someone who hasn't seen the world. When I was traveling in the Middle East, I even took pictures with the peacekeeping troops on the battlefield. We've also been to the United Nations and seen the personal bodyguards of those big leaders. I'm serious. Let Nieli say something more reliable." F***CK, I'm talking about serious things. Fu Tian is brothers with the fierce man called Su Yun from the Divine Dragon Special Forces. Don't talk nonsense if you don't know anything. Nieli glared at the young man with the caliper hairstyle. This group of people was the group of rich young masters from the BBA Supercar Club who loved Ferrari. The leader was naturally Fu Tian, and the caliper hairstyle was a brother that they rarely saw. This kid had emigrated to Australia for 5 or 6 years. After he came back, he still couldn't change his habit of bragging, saying that he had seen armed special forces. When Nieli heard this, he was unhappy and immediately brought up Su Yun. But the caliper hairstyle didn't believe it at all. He thought that Nieli was bragging. Divine Dragon Special Forces? Ha ha ha, I think you've watched too many cartoons. Why don't you say Divine Dragon Fighter? If you say that young Master Fu is brothers with Divine Dragon Fighter, then you're even more awesome. F***CK off, I don't want to chat with you. If you're full of bullsh*T, then that's called awesome. You think that whatever others say is bullsh*T. What do you mean? Nieli had always been unhappy with this guy. When Fu Tian heard Nieli's big mouth talking about everything, he also pulled him back. Don't talk nonsense about Brother Yin outside. Aren't you afraid of causing big trouble? Nieli knew that Su Yun's identity was very confidential, so he didn't say anything. It was up to him to believe it or not. Anyway, he didn't believe what this arrogant guy said. When the caliper hairstyle heard Fu Tian's words, he was really interested. F***CK, don't be so mysterious. I believe it. God, tell me about your Divine Dragon Fighter, Su Yun. How is he awesome? Is he good at fighting? How many people can he fight alone? Is it not a problem for the few of you to fight together? If he can't even deal with the few of you, then he's definitely not a big shot. All right, let's drink and talk. You've been out for so many years. Why are you still the same when you come back? Fu Tian was a little impatient. Can't you have some backbone and take off your big talk, nickname in front of us? Come, let's drink. Yanjing's door is always open. You're welcome here. Cheers, go to Australia and learn how to drink wine. The few of them toasted each other and drank happily with the beauties surrounding them. They didn't notice that the foreigner nearby was so engrossed in their conversation that his eyes were glowing with greed. It was really a case of traveling far and wide looking for something, only to find it by chance. This was too unexpected for Christian. He originally planned to use a week or even 2 weeks to come up with a plan to lure the snake out of its hole. But now it seemed that he didn't need that long. Dragon Brigade Su Yun. It was such a coincidence. The tall, rich, and handsome men at the next table couldn't be full of nonsense. If they knew about Su Yun's identity, their relationship was definitely not ordinary. It shouldn't be difficult to find Su Yun through them, right? Chapter 1363. Fu Tian, Huang Xiaohan, Wu Xiuqing, Gao Wanya, Nieli, and Di Cheng, whom they had nicknamed Big Joke, had all grown up together. They had been born in the same expensive private hospital and lived in the same wealthy district. They had grown up together whistling at the girls in Yanjing. He knew very well that his friends were disgusted with Di Cheng, but he had never isolated Di Cheng. This was because Di Cheng had always been the first to stand up and help him whenever they had gotten into a fight when they had been young. Di Cheng had never hesitated no matter who had hit him. It was because of Di Cheng's code of brotherhood that Fu Tian had always treated him as a brother. No matter how talkative he was, Fu Tian had never exposed him or given him a way out. Nieli had always been unhappy with Di Cheng because Di Cheng had always relied on Fu Tian to tolerate him. The more Di Cheng boasted, the more unreliable he became. Even the most trivial matters were exaggerated. At first they could still treat it as a joke, but the more they heard, the more impatient they became. Some of his boasting was too big, so Nieli had always suspected that Di Cheng's behavior was because he treated them like fools. Therefore, even though Fu Tian had always given Di Cheng a way out, Nieli had always exposed him. He wanted Di Cheng to be ashamed of his actions. However, Di Cheng had never seemed to feel ashamed of his words and actions. On the contrary, the more Nieli didn't believe him, the more he tried to prove that what he said was true. Therefore, the two of them had formed a vicious cycle. Ever since they bumped into each other in the afternoon, whether it was during afternoon tea or dinner, the two of them had never stopped bickering. That was why he brought them to this nightclub where it was easy to find beautiful women. In less than half an hour, they were surrounded by all kinds of beautiful girls in short skirts and tube tops that revealed their breasts. These two people actually continued to bicker endlessly. His head was a little big from listening to them. If they still couldn't drink properly, he really wanted to slap the table and leave. For a guy who had been frequenting nightclubs since he was 12 years old, drinking was naturally not a problem. Di Cheng downed the wine in his glass in one gulp and slammed it on the table. Nieli, I'm not bragging, but I met a ruthless person in Australia. I can guarantee that he's 100 times more awesome than the dragon fighter you've mentioned. You really don't know when to stop. Other than talking, can't you do something more practical? What ruthless person? Bring him out for everyone to see. Nieli snorted. Have you thought of the name of the ruthless person you're talking about before you start bragging? His name is Xiong Zhozhou, an assassin. Di Cheng's expression was very rich. He fell into a trap when he was carrying out a mission in Australia. When he had nowhere else to go, he broke into my house. What a guy! He even King bragged about being an assassin. Fu Tian smiled helplessly. If this grandson continued to brag like this, the girls around him would probably leave because they heard too much nonsense. He wouldn't be able to find any beautiful women tonight, and he probably wouldn't have the chance to bring them to a hotel. He really wanted to remind him that if he was smart, he should shut up early so that he wouldn't regret it when the time came. Hey, a killer broke into the house. What are you doing? Gao Wanya couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of wine. Although he was also annoyed by this guy's bragging, it wasn't to the extent of Nieli's. However, after hearing this, He really couldn't help but want to ridicule him. This was a bit too much. Didn't you use a brick to kill that assassin? He's a real fierce man. If he wanted to take my life, I wouldn't even have the chance to hold a brick. Dicheng said, You don't believe me. Let me finish talking. That night, I brought an Australian model home for the night. Just as I was about to climax, I was interrupted by him. I was so scared that I trembled on the spot. I thought that my girlfriend at that time had returned. Nieli really broke down when he heard this. Didn't he make you impotent in an instant? What is the root of the problem now? Do you want our Yanjing girls to treat you tonight? Forget it. If you can't get it up, no one will be willing to go back to the hotel with you. Our Yanjing girls don't like to waste time with trash. Everyone here is a fierce man. Dicheng ignored Nieli's sarcasm and continued, He is an assassin. What can we do? We do whatever he wants us to do. Guess what? He actually asked me to close the door and come back to continue doing what I should do with the model. And he was hiding in the closet next to my bed. Oh my God, I thought that this guy had a peeping problem. He actually asked us to do that. But he had a gun in his hand, so I had no choice but to do as he said. His words were treated as a joke by everyone present. Fu Tian and the rest spat out their wine, and the girls were also laughing so hard that they couldn't close their mouths. Nieli wondered if this guy was really using his life to make a joke. Did Dicheng not think that he was bragging, but that he was just expressing his sense of humor? If that was what he thought, then fine. Nieli admitted defeat. What's so funny? That was the first time I slept with a girl in front of others. I still have a shadow of it. Dicheng said with a serious face. You know, less than half an hour later, someone barged in again. This time, I was really scared. 5 men in black came in all at once. They all had guns in their hands. When they came to my room and saw that I was doing that kind of thing, they ignored me and went straight to the other rooms. They didn't say anything and left quickly. This guy. Had he watched too many gunfight movies? Sigh, why would a fierce master need a gun? Du Tian smiled bitterly. A master like Brother Yun wouldn't use a gun. Their fists were more reliable than guns. That's when I realized that those people were chasing after the killer hiding in my closet. Dicheng said. The reason why he asked me to continue was because he knew that if his pursuers came here and saw that we were still on the bed, they would quickly determine that he was not in this room. Then he would be able to escape this calamity. You're really smart. Why didn't I notice when you were young that your reaction was so fast? You could even deduce that? Huang Xiaohan held his stomach and laughed. You're too calm. Logically speaking, with your guts, you should have been scared to the point of wetting your bed, right? Haha. It wasn't hard to see that his friends were amused by Dicheng's bragging, but Dicheng became more and more serious. I'm really not joking. Xiong Zhozhou is really a killer. After the people chasing after him left, I didn't hear any movement in the closet. I thought that I was just having a dream, but the dream was too realistic. If the dream was so realistic, then it must mean that you've been taking drugs. Fu Tian finally spoke. Although it's not difficult to get some marijuana overseas, it's better if you don't touch those things. Am I that kind of person? Dicheng said. I've never touched those things. Do you think I'm little Momo? I won't take drugs just because I have some ability. Of course, it wasn't a dream. When I opened the closet door, I was shocked. F***ck, the closet was full of blood. That scene really scared me. At this point, Dicheng's expression still showed some lingering fear. Everyone was speechless. Wasn't this joke too much? His life was hanging by a thread. He had lost too much blood, Dicheng said. My heart softened at that time, so I called a private doctor to my house and gave him emergency treatment. I even used my blood for a blood transfusion. We have the same blood type. After he woke up and found out about all this, we became brothers. He said that I saved his life, so no matter what happened to me in the future, he would definitely be the first to stand up and help me solve it, because his life was given to him by me. Are you done bragging? Nieli interrupted Dicheng's bold words. Dicheng rolled his eyes. I'll also tell you that Xiong Zhozhou came with me to Huaxia this time. I'll let you meet me another day, and let you know if I'm telling the truth. Come, drink. Chapter 1364. It was a good feeling to drink and brag with his friends. Fu Tian enjoyed the process. The few of them played until the wee hours of the morning. In the end, they didn't even pick up girls or have sex. A few young men walked hand in hand on the streets of Yanjing and sang loudly ******* taught us that the educated youth should go to the countryside. They even taught us to accept the education of the poor and lower middle peasants. With a wave of your hand. We will go wherever you wave your hand. The vast world with great achievements. Now that I think about it, we still love you. One is not afraid of hardship, and the other is not afraid of death. Only by marching in unison can we obtain victory. If we are determined, we will not be afraid of sacrifice. We will overcome all difficulties and strive for victory. With a single song, the entire Yanjing city's night streets were brighter than usual. They hadn't done this kind of thing for a long time. If they hadn't drunk too much today, they probably wouldn't have done such a funny thing. Everyone on the street looked at them with a look that said, "Are you a clown invited by a monkey?" Fortunately, alcohol made people lose all sense of shame. Everyone didn't feel embarrassed. Di Cheng, who had returned to Beijing after so many years, shouted loudly at the night sky of Beijing. No matter how good it is abroad, it's not as good as our motherland. No matter how beautiful it was overseas, it was not as beautiful as his home country. No matter how round the moon is overseas, it's not as round as our motherland. Do you know why our country's moon is round? Fu Tian also laughed loudly. Because today is the 15th. The moon on the 15th is round in full. Then why isn't the moon on the 15th of the lunar year round abroad? Di Cheng asked again. Nieli snorted and looked at Di Cheng with an uncultured and scary gaze. That's because there's a time difference between us and overseas. They're only 14 on the night of the 15th. Could they reconcile? An oval is already good enough. Brotherly, I never thought that you would be so cultured. You even know about jet lag. Di Cheng laughed heartily. Although Nieli had always been harsh to him, he didn't mind. Friends should be like this. They should say whatever they wanted to say. And if they didn't like someone, they should be straightforward. Only this was a true friendship. If friends still had to flatter each other hypocritically, then it wouldn't be interesting. Nieli also laughed heartily. I've always been very cultured. It's just that you guys have never seen it. Brotherly knows everything from astronomy to geography. There's really nothing that can stump us. Since young, we've been nicknamed 100,000 Wise. There's nothing we don't understand. The few of them bragged loudly as they swaggered down the street, completely unaware of the danger behind them. Right behind them, Christian had never let them out of his sight. He felt quite lucky. If it weren't for the fact that they were too drunk to drive, he wouldn't have the confidence to catch up with the Ferraris at the entrance of the nightclub. Now that they were walking on the streets of Beijing, they were completely defenseless prey in his eyes. Christian let them wander aimlessly in front of him. Finally, they stopped in an empty park. Perhaps it was because this park had memories of their first gang fight, so these guys walked over unconsciously. At that time, they had only been 7 or 8 years old. However, they had fought to the death with a group of people for a girl. The other group had been Song Dong and his 3 brothers. It was also at that time that they had formed a grudge. This grudge had been formed for more than 10 years. Until now, whenever they met, they would fight to the death. Even when he was in Dicheng, Australia, he accidentally met Song Dong's 4th brother, Song Bei, who was traveling on a beach in Australia. He immediately brought a few of his local friends to trip Song Bei up and teach him a lesson. Song Bei was humiliated in front of the girl he brought along. Later, Dicheng had also heard that the girl Song Bei had brought with him to Australia was the daughter of a certain group. The Song family had wanted to use the child's marriage to form a strong alliance. Unfortunately, the daughter of a rich family wasn't easy to deal with. Song Bei had lost face in front of her. In the end, he had spent a lot of money, but he hadn't even been able to hold her hand before he had to go back dejectedly. When Fu Tian and the others found out that it was actually Dicheng who had done this, they felt very happy. The Song brothers had lost face in front of them, which was what they liked the most. Just as the few of them were reminiscing about their childhood fights with the Song brothers in this park, Christian slowly walked behind them. Friends, you're still playing in the park so late at night. Aren't you afraid of encountering zombies? No matter how good Christian's Chinese was, he still had the accent of a foreigner. Furthermore, he had appeared so suddenly in the middle of the night. There was no movement at all, but he had suddenly appeared behind them and started talking about zombies. Was he King deliberately scaring them? Everyone had goosebumps all over when they heard that. Even their little hearts couldn't take it anymore. What the CK? Fu Tian and the other brothers turned their heads and stared with wide eyes at the completely unfamiliar face of the foreigner in front of them. Their faces were filled with astonishment and anger, and all of them fell onto the ground. Do you know what the CK is? Nieli had the most straightforward temper among the few of them. He couldn't tolerate this foreigner scaring them for no reason at all. He had to let him know why the flowers were so red. If he didn't beat him up, he would be letting down the ordinary people of Huaxia who were bullied by the Eight-Nation Alliance back then. Of course I know. Christian was very calm. Then do you know what the CK is? CK. This foreigner still dared to talk back. This time, he had instantly ignited the desire of the brothers to fight. He even scolded them King. Fine. I'll CK you. Then the brothers must CK you. If they didn't beat you until you returned to your mother's womb, then they wouldn't be considered little men in Yanjing City. Get him. Fu Tian ordered under the influence of alcohol. None of the brothers cowered. They swarmed forward and directly pounced on Christian. However, it was still too inexperienced for them to deal with Christian. In just a few seconds, Fu Tian and the others were lying on the ground. They were still talking about fierce people when they were drinking today. Not long after they came out, they actually met a fierce person. His attacks were too ruthless. Diqing gritted his teeth and stood up. He looked at Christian in surprise. He knew that this guy was the same as Xiong Zhozhou. They weren't ordinary people. If he had known that he would encounter such a robbery today, he would have really asked Xiong Zhozhou to come with him to his brother's gathering. Foreigner, what do you want? Just say it. Huaxia is a place where laws are emphasized. Don't mess around. Robbery is small, but don't hurt people. It won't look good if you hurt people. Christian saw that the other party was terrified and couldn't help but laugh. I was just defending myself. It seems like you guys started it first. If you didn't pretend to be a zombie to scare people, why would we hit you? CK. There's something wrong with this idiot. Nieli was kicked in the stomach. It was so painful that he couldn't straighten his back. What a strong force. He had never met such a fierce person in all these years of fighting. What was more infuriating was that this person was actually a foreigner. Could it be that this foreigner knew martial arts? If you don't want to be beaten up again, then answer a few of my questions. Christian still had a calm smile on his face. If not, I will definitely let you taste pain 10,000 times worse than now. Hee hee. I sincerely hope that everyone can be happy and become friends. What do you think? That you're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.